Night. The large building of the Queenshan Psychiatric Hospital. Starlight penetrates through the window into one of the rooms. The night air moves the curtains. It seems that something is happening in the room. A man tied with an electrical wire lies on a hospital bed. Despite the situation, his face is calm and serene, with a slight smile. Another guy with long white hair and a joyful sparkle in his eyes is holding two ends of the wire in his hands. He is going to insert the two ends of the wire into the socket to fry the person tied up with the wire. Despite the fact that he seems to be in danger of death, the man on the bed is just as calm and serene, claiming that everything is right. The moment the wires are inserted into the socket, a sound is heard. A guy with white hair sits next to the outlet in a hospital gown and pants. Doctors are taking a guy with black hair to the hospital. The guy has received significant injuries. His hair is disheveled. His skin is burned. Following the doctors taking the patient to the ambulance, a figure with white hair runs. He asks to take him with him, says that his sick friend cannot survive without him. After which he begins to pretend to be a doctor, takes the stretcher with the patient in his hands, and begins to give orders to the orderlies. The doctor can't stand it and tells the orderlies to take the second patient too. A check at the hospital won't hurt him. From above, a figure in a suit is watching this whole scene from his office. The head of the clinic, Shihao, he begins to remember all his patients. One of them considers himself an astronomer who has proven that the Earth is actually shaped like a cube. Another considers himself a doctor who has invented a means to help men get pregnant. The head of the psychiatric hospital reflects that even though all these people are sick, at least they have a decent profession. But there are two people who stand out even among the patients of the mental hospital. The electric shock was so strong that it left a characteristic burn on the bed. Inside the ambulance, the procedures continue. Jean wants to stick a needle into his comrade's head. He reacts to this extremely calmly with the same slight smile, declaring that his head is very clear. John states that the reason for this is his acupuncture technique. But the one with a needle in his head begins to talk about a certain circle that he sees and which welcomes him to the system. The morning on Mount Taishan was also turbulent, a huge crater from an explosion or blow from a huge creature. Wild animals are running away from a terrible fiery creature, a luminous silhouette shaped like a fox. They, however, do not manage to escape far. The blow of the fire demon's tail sweeps them away along with the people who were nearby. Report on the explosion on Mount Taishai during which demons of the 8th level appeared. An ambulance drives past the stand where this report is being shown, taking an electrical victim to the hospital at high speed. A red light on the operating room door lights up along with the words, "Operation in progress." During the operation, a screen hangs in the air on which it is written that the strongest human system has found a master, but there are problems in his mind. The picture of preparations for the operation, the doctors understand that they have come to their old patient who constantly inflicts severe injuries on himself. The patient suffered second-degree burns. Doctors are stabilizing his blood pressure. They are going to give the victim serious anesthesia and begin the operation as quickly as possible. But when the doctor brings the mask with anesthesia to his face, he begins to say that he feels very good now. With a straight face, he states that the electricity has cleansed him. They don't need to anesthetize him. They just need to cut off the burnt skin. One of the doctors loses his temper, unable to contain his anger, declaring that the patient's burn is the result of his stupid actions. The patient just as calmly claims that he has an inhuman mind and pain only hardens him. When the mask is brought to him again, he declares that under no circumstances does he want to be given anesthesia. Otherwise, he will not pay for the treatment. The doctor, however, simply shuts him up, putting the anesthesia mask on him with a quick, graceful gesture. The guy says he will resist the anesthesia with the power of his mind, but soon falls asleep. Footage from the childhood of the patient. Lin Fan, at the age of 10, he hits himself on the head with a hammer, declaring that he has a head of steel. His mother, completely shocked, drops the phone from her hands and jumps in place, her hair standing on end. After another attempt by the boy to injure himself, she shows him to the doctors and reads a long report on his condition. At this time, Fan pulls his mother's dress and asks her to throw him off the 15th floor in order to open 2 vital points in the stomach. The report contains a phrase that her son is not dangerous to others, but is prone to harming himself. Lin Fan is placed in a psychiatric hospital in a VIP ward, despite his claims that he is healthy. Nowadays, in Lin Fan's room after the operation, John eats a banana. He throws the banana peel into the trash can while his friend lies on the bed and stares into space. Lin Fan says that he is getting better and asks to do the acupuncture procedure again. Jan happily agrees, declaring that she is learning a new acupuncture technique. At this time, the orderly in the ward is sitting intently on the phone and does not notice what is happening. John, holding the needles between his fingers, declares that he has mastered a new acupuncture technique, a universal level. He diligently begins to stick needles into the arm of his roommate, blood gushing from the puncture sites. After this, with genuine childish interest, he asks Fan how he is feeling. He states that he hears some voices in his head. This makes John very happy. He is sure that they appeared thanks to the use of techniques from the Acupuncture manual. John asks what these voices told Fan, who begins to answer. But he doesn't have time to finish and switches off. The devices next to his bed begin to beep. Hearing the beeping of the instruments, an orderly runs up to the bed. He realizes that the patient's condition has worsened and in desperation calls the doctor. The orderlies rush into the room. They are about to take Fan to the emergency room. His arm is covered in needles and his heart is beating very quickly. One of them, seeing the criticality of the situation, shouts to call the chief doctor. In the operating room, a screen with a circle appears above the guy's body again. He says that Fan received the strongest guidance in martial arts. At this time, the chief doctor, exhausted from night duty, his soul almost leaves his body. The doctor states that he is very tired, his face looks very shrunken. He says that he really wants to sleep. Instead of his eyes, we see two dark spots.
He still really wants to eat after his party! Even more emaciated, and he begins to resemble a skeleton.
Here he takes out lunch prepared by his wife. The very sight of lunch gives the doctor strength, and the picture seems to be filled with golden light. Lunch really looks appetizing. In the eyes of the hungry doctor, it seems to be shrouded in a golden glow. The doctor starts the long-awaited lunch. Using chopsticks, he throws the first piece into his mouth. Finally, he can eat. A man is enthusiastically having lunch, sitting in front of a computer. The air around him is literally filled with the smell of flowers. A nurse in a pink uniform opens the door, and she literally runs into the office and says that the patient has injured himself. The doctor's face freezes for a second in bewilderment. He still holds the chopsticks in his hands. In anger, he throws his long-awaited lunch on the floor, outraged that after a long shift he has to work again. The nurse, frightened by the wrath of the head physician, declares that their profile is simply not suitable for treating such patients. In daylight, the Queen Shan Psychiatric Hospital building looks even more majestic. Someone knocks on the clinic director's door and asks to enter. A young man with an envelope in his hands looks into the door and wants to clarify whether the order for the purchase of one grave is valid. The clinic director, drinking a hot drink, states that the order can be canceled. He received a call from the clinic and was informed that Fan's condition is fine. When he is told that the head of the cemetery will next ask for a corpse as evidence, he reacts calmly. Stating that he has only ordered and canceled a grave for a patient 60 times, this is somewhat shocking to the young man. The head of the clinic calmly continues to drink his drink, but at this time the bell rings. The person on the other end of the line shouts indignantly that it is difficult to save a person's life if he tries to kill himself over and over again. He asks if the mental hospital is torturing him, his entire body riddled with anger that is released like a volcanic eruption. Li Lai Fu, vice president of the hospital where Fan was treated, slams his hand on the table in anger. Shai calmly calls the young man with an envelope who is about to leave and asks him not to cancel his place in the cemetery for now. This once again shocks him and makes him as uncomfortable as possible. The vice president of the clinic says that the patient creates trouble for them over and over again, and after the operation, he himself will return him to the clinic. He does not agree to look after the patient any longer, claiming that he is a danger to other patients. In anger, he even says that he will cut the guy into pieces and return him to the clinic in this form if he is not taken back whole. He knocks on the table again, indicating that the patient has pushed him to the limit and he is willing to go to great lengths to get rid of him, even violating medical ethics. Having finished the conversation, he throws the telephone receiver on the table, outraged by the manner of dialogue of the head of the psychiatric clinic. At this time, the red light on the surgery door is on again. An operation is in progress. Under the doors of the surgery, an upset John lies on a chair, wondering where he miscalculated. He looks like a big kitten when he lies on his back and moves his paws. People who pass by whisper that this man is crazy. The mother hurries to take the interested child away from the dangerous person. Jan looks at the needles pressed between her fingers and decides that she needs to try her technique again. He has a theatrical fit and calls for a nurse, foaming at the mouth. The doctor performing Fan's surgery says that when Lee called him to this clinic, he promised that he could improve his level by participating in complex surgeries. The doctor's face is darker than a cloud. He says that back then he did not know how difficult complex operations could be. But after operating on this patient 48 times, I finally understood. He breaks down and starts crying, tears flowing from his eyes. The nurses immediately begin wiping away his sweat and tears and telling him to get ready. At this time, a screen again appears in front of the patient and offers a choice, whether he wants to receive a reward, improving his violence once. Since damage is noticed in his mind, the choice will be made for him, and the countdown to restore his body begins. The evening news on the screen in the hallway reports that the National Guard managed to defeat the Level 7 monster, but many of the creatures managed to escape. After a successful operation, Fan is taken to the ambulance. The operation was successful. The nurse is terribly happy about it. The vice president of the clinic, sitting in the car, asks him to hurry up. He can't wait to get rid of such a problematic patient. The ambulance driver tries to take his seat and says that the vice president doesn't have to drive the ambulance himself, but Lee pushes him aside. The nurse says that there is another patient in the hospital who needs to be taken to a psychiatric clinic. This infuriates the vice president, and he doesn't intend to waste a second before taking Fan back to the clinic. The nurse catches up with the ambulance and hands over the mask of Dr. Wong, the doctor who performed the operation on Fan. Lee looks at the mask in horror and sees words written there in blood. On the mask, dirty with blood, the words are written in blood. "I'm leaving." The head of the psychiatric hospital clasped his hands in a prayerful gesture. He asks Buddha for a favor, to prevent the most problematic patient from returning to the clinic. But just a second later, at the gates of the clinic, the creaking sound of a braking ambulance is heard, which somewhat shakes Mr. Shi's faith in Buddha. The orderly rolls out a stretcher with the operated Fan. At this time, the head of the psychiatric clinic approaches the car. His appearance is full of friendliness, and 2 orderlies run after him. Lee looks at Mr. Shi warily. He can't wait to get rid of Fan and Jen. Shi smiles, feigning his usual concern for the patient's health, and says that he is afraid that Fan's wounds will open again. He remembers his friendship with Lee and, still smiling, asks for help. The vice president of the clinic becomes gloomy. He understands what his friend's request will be and that it does not bode well for him. When Mr. Shi asks to keep Fan in the clinic and observe him, Lee's face turns gray and a shiver runs through him. The next second, he falls to his knees with a loud sound. 2 frightened orderlies watch this with their mouths open and eyes bulging. Kneeling down, Vice President Lee begins his speech as leaves fly by, emphasizing his determination. He asks his friend not to ruin his hospital. Because of these 2 patients, the best doctor at his clinic suffered a nervous breakdown. Mr. Shi understands that with his gesture, Lee ruined his entire plan to put pressure on his friendship with Lee and detain dangerous patients for some more time. Lee continues his theatrics. He pats Shi on the shoulder and calls him brother. Before Shi has time to come to his senses, he puts his other hand on his shoulder and tells him that if he doesn't say anything, he will consider it an agreement. He doesn't have time to find an answer for Lee. He just stands there with his mouth open while the vice president says the end of his tirade. Before anyone knows it, Lee jumps into the ambulance and drives away, shouting that he doesn't need the stretcher and can keep it. Still shocked by what was said, Mr. Shi and 2 paramedics stand next to the stretcher and watch the ambulance drive away. Lee is in a hurry to get away from such dangerous patients, makes a sharp turn and shouts goodbye words from the car. Shi is still silent. The orderlies behind him are still in shock from what happened and are anxiously awaiting the reaction of the head of the clinic. Finally, Shi sighs heavily. He realizes that his plan has failed and he will have to take care of 2 especially dangerous patients again. He shows concern for Fan. He touches the stretcher with his hand and asks him if he is feeling well. Fan says he feels just great, which cannot be said about the shocked orderlies. Jan happily says that she also feels great. Shi replies that this is good. Sighing, he tells the orderlies to take the patients to the room and remember to fix the bars on the windows. Night falls. The hospital lobby is illuminated by electric lamps. In the ward, the bound Jean fidgets. Lying on the bed, he asks Fan to help him free himself. Fan says that he has no time for this now. He trains himself. He lies with his eyes closed, intensely concentrating on something. Opening his eyes, he claims that in his head there is a crazy girl teaching him fighting techniques, and also that she said, body strengthening is completed. Now he feels the hot air moving inside his body and that it is quite pleasant. His friend is very happy about this. He is sure that it is thanks to his training with Fan that changes have occurred. His roommate confirms his words, claiming that the universal level acupuncture technique and the electrical manual gave results. The friends are happy and decide to continue training. At this time, Mr. Shi, who is accompanied by 2 orderlies, is watching from the corridor what is happening in the ward. Mr. Shi looks out the window of the ward and notices that the patients this time are not screaming or playing pranks. The orderlies agree with him, but from their excitement you can understand that something is wrong. They are secretly happy that the head of the clinic did not find out that the patient stole the hammer somewhere in the hospital. Having never learned about the hammer, Mr. Shy satisfied leaves, hoping that at least this time everything will go smoothly, but not all hopes are destined to come true. The full moon hangs in the sky above the city. Starlight illuminates the streets and houses. A woman in pink walks slowly along a street illuminated by moonlight and starlight. Despite the late hour, she is in no hurry because she is busy with her phone and does not notice how an ominous shadow hangs over her. The girl turns around only when she hears a loud growling sound. For another second, she does not realize what is happening. Her face turns pale with horror when she sees a creature casting such a terrible shadow. Hands stop a bang. The phone falls out of hands, paralyzed by fear. A moment later, the sound of a growl is heard and 2 rows of sharp teeth of a monster flash. The phone lying on the ground is stained with the blood of an unfortunate woman. She has become a victim of a cursed creature. Jan and Fan's chamber. The morning light penetrates the windows of the chamber. John is snoring peacefully. His friend is freed with the help of his new abilities and gets rid of the straitjacket. We see that his body has been transformed. There are no signs of burns or other injuries. Fan wakes John up and frees him from the straitjacket, as he requested earlier. The friend admires Fan's transformed body and thinks it's because of their constant training. Off-screen, the blue circle is unhappy that John and Fan are taking credit for his efforts, claiming that he trained Fan alone. In a hospital corridor, a worker is intently fixing electrical wiring. Suddenly, a dark shadow looms over him too. Will he also become a victim of the monster? Trembling, the electrician remembers the dark rumors that are circulating about the hospital, thinks that he will become a victim of a ghost, while a mysterious white hand reaches out to him. A hand lands on the electrician's shoulder with a bang, and in surprise, he begins to scream. Chen removes his hand and, as if nothing had happened, greets the frightened electrician. He literally radiates goodwill. The electrician calms down somewhat, realizing that what disturbed him consists of flesh and blood, but is still scared. The man is so much like a ghost. He remembers how he was told about the patients of the ominous ward, who are almost more dangerous than monsters. John again greets the electrician, who understands that this is a patient from the same ward. The electrician, covered in cold sweat, finds the strength to greet him in return with a trembling voice. Having taken advantage of the electrician's fright, a hammer from the electrician's toolbox, Fan pulls his friend's hair. John turns to Fan and in his absurd way asks if he has eaten. Friends John and Fan go into the room. John waves his hand and promises the electrician that they will see each other again. The frightened electrician realizes that he would give a lot just to never see these two. Having slightly recovered from his fright, he thinks that working in this clinic could be dangerous. Thinking that if it weren't for the high salary, he wouldn't work here, the guy opens the toolbox and sees that the hammer is missing. The electrician hears the sounds of knocks coming from the room. Unable to control his curiosity, he goes to the source of the sounds of the impact, to the chamber. Curiosity overcomes fear, and he looks into the room through the window in the door. He sees John hitting Fan's chest with a hammer. Frightened again. The electrician cannot understand what is going on. John, noticing that he is being followed, turns around and addresses the electrician, his eyes glowing red, blood dripping from the hammer. The electrician runs away from the ward in horror. He runs down the corridor, calling for help and shouting that there is a psycho killer in the ward, tears flowing from his eyes. After some time, the orderlies drag him back into the ward by the arm. He desperately resists and shouts that he will never return to the ward. Despite his screams, 2 orderlies drag the electrician to the ward, followed by a nurse in a pink uniform. Mr. Shy walks in front with his hands behind his back. Businesslike, apparently the electrician is being led into the room on his orders. Entering the light-filled room without the slightest trace of blood, everyone sees patients peacefully drinking liquid from a bag. The electrician turns his head in surprise, cannot understand what happened and where all the blood went. He swears that he saw everything. In response to Shi's question, Fan states that he drinks cola, and Ran states that he drinks rum. The inscription on the package reads, soy milk. Shy sighs heavily again. Another trouble from John and Fan. It seems that he understands that something is unclean. Turning to the electrician with absolute calm and his light smile, he puts his hand on his shoulder, saying that it was just his imagination. The victim, turning to Shy, says that he no longer likes the job and does not need to call even if he is paid more. But the thirst for money overcomes fear, and he agrees to think about it. If they pay double, he also asks for the hammer to be returned to him. Shi, turning to the patients, angrily demands that the hammer be returned to the electrician. Jan waves his hand, indicating that he did not take the hammer. Fan waves his hand, indicating that he does not have a hammer in his hands. However, the head of the clinic manages to force Fan to retrieve the hidden hammer. Shy extends his hand to the patient and kindly asks him to hand over the hammer. Fan, who is holding a hammer, does not intend to give it up just like that. He tells Shai to come and take the hammer while Rand continues to spin from side to side. The head of the clinic, however, realizes that coming so close to such an unpredictable patient with a hammer is dangerous. He orders Fan to throw him the hammer. They argue for several minutes while the orderlies, nurse, and electrician watch with concern. The figures of the head of the clinic and Fan freeze opposite each other. No one wants to make concessions. Shai remembers that it's his birthday tomorrow and he doesn't want there to be his funeral instead. However, having gathered his will into a fist, he agrees to approach Fan and take the hammer. Behind Shai, the hospital staff are amazed at his bravery. The head of the clinic's heart is pounding as he approaches Fan. To the sound of his heartbeat, he reaches out a trembling hand to the hammer. Nothing bad happens. The patient allows the hammer to be taken away. The nurse applauds Shai, admiring his courage and praising him. The orderlies are also happy that Shai is alive and are delighted with his action. The hero of the day hands the hammer to the electrician and declares that it is just a small problem. The electrician looks at Shai in surprise and sees that taking the hammer from Fan was not so easy. Streams of sweat flow down the head's face, which he hastily wipes with a handkerchief. The TV in the clinic shows the evening news. A young girl talks about a terrible monster that the government will hunt. A gray-haired patient at the clinic claims that the TV presenter is his wife. Another person sitting nearby confidently claims that this is his daughter. The gray-haired patient puts two and two together and says that the other patient is his father-in-law. They hug and begin to cry, rejoicing that they have finally found each other. John points to the TV presenter and asks Fan if he knows her. Fan says that she is that girl of his, apparently referring to the girl in his head. The father-in-law and son-in-law understand this phrase somewhat differently and are shocked by what they hear. John's face and the hand raised to his chin also express doubts. A young girl takes a power level test. The test shows that her power level is level 2. She can't wait to go after the dog-type monster. Shenyan is sure that together, 4 people with the second level of strength can easily defeat the creature. The young people agree with Shenyan and want to quickly go hunting. The guy with long hair declares that by taking down the monster, they can show their potential. Elite students from the 4th school go hunting for a monster. Jan and Fan are sitting on chairs and listening to the evening news. The TV presenter says the date, Saturday, the 29th of February. John is surprised how it can now be the 29th of February. He looks at the clock, which shows the 7th of March. Fan says that John's watch is slow, but he says that it is a luxury watch that costs 100 million won. A patient wearing glasses approaches them and wants to examine the watch. Having examined the watch with a magnifying glass, he claims that everything is in order and just needs to be corrected. The watch will last the rest of the buyer's life. He guarantees this. After licking his finger, the watch seller declares that the client spent 1 million yen in his shop and he will repair it for free. He erases the old date from the watch with his finger and writes a new one with a marker, after which he busily tells Zhanya to check the master's work. A painted watch with the inscription Rolex and the correct date is visible on the hand. In the ward, John says that the seller deceived him and this is a fake watch, otherwise it would not have broken so quickly. Fan takes the soy milk and offers his friend a Coke. His friend takes the milk, thanks Fan, and calms down somewhat. Cheerful John drinks milk and says that cold Sprite is better. Fan states that the girl in his head is talking again. Continuing to drink milk, John asks what she is saying. Fan begins to tell. He doesn't have time to finish. Time freezes in place. The screen tells Fan that in order to stop this, he needs to complete the mission. To complete the mission, you need to help the founder's heir stop being bullied at school. The room is all pink. There is a plush toy on the bed. Everything around is sparkling with cleanliness. Fan discovers the body of another person in this room and cannot understand where he ended up. He looks in a beautiful large mirror at his new appearance and decides that he was transported into the body of a girl, but quickly realizes that he was mistaken. At dinner, Fan behaves strangely. The mother of the man into whose body he was transferred realizes that something is wrong with her son. Her suspicions only increase when Fan gulps down a bowl of soup and praises him. For the first time in a long time, Fan finds himself in the outside world and goes to the bus stop. He is amazed at the silence after the screams of the mental hospital. Chen Yang's mother told him to go to school, and since Fang is now in his body, he takes the bus and goes to school. From his seat, he sees a little girl get on the bus. She stands next to the seated Fan and tries to reach the top rail, but is unable to do so due to her short stature. Fan gives her his seat, and the girl sincerely thanks him for this. At this time, a guy with purple hair and a piercing in his ear gets on the bus. The guy turns out to be Zhan Hao, Chen Yang's classmate, and he is surprised when he sees him on the bus. He approaches Fan in Chen Yang's body and indignantly asks why he didn't take his place. Fan remains unfazed when his classmate grabs his chin and repeats his question. Seeing that there was no reaction, John asks if Fang wants to be beaten and lightly slaps him across the face. The school bully remembers how Chen used to react in pain when he and his classmates beat him. He waves his hand in front of Fan's face, hoping to get some kind of reaction, but Fan doesn't even blink. This causes a slight stupor in Zhang. He understands that something is wrong with Chen today. The girl wants to protect Fan and says that she was the one who asked him to give her his seat. At this moment, screams are heard. A bloody man runs into the bus. He shouts to the driver to drive faster, and the killer is chasing him. However, it is too late. A man with a bloody knife, who scared away a bunch of people on the street, climbs onto the bus. The killer enters the bus and, waving a knife, threatens to cut everyone. Among the frightened people, Fan maintains an equanimity of spirit and declares that the man with the knife is not crazy. He raises a knife over the girl to whom Fan gave way. The weapon flies towards her. She screams in horror. A splash of blood is heard. It seems that the killer's knife struck the victim. Jan screams and points his finger at the terrible picture that was revealed to him. Fan stopped the killer's cleaver with his hand, blood pouring from his wound. Clutching the cleaver in his pierced, bloody hand, the girl's defender calls the killer a monk and asks why he kills people. The attacker is shocked that the man is holding a knife with his wounded hand and demands that he let him go. Fan continues to calmly hold the knife with one cut hand. The killer again demands to let go of the knife. The boy demands the same from the killer, so they argue for some time, pulling the knife towards themselves. The bus passengers watch this in complete horror, their mouths open in surprise. The maniac is shocked by Fan's behavior. It seems he doesn't know what to do. He gives up. The situation has deeply affected him, and he releases the knife into the guy's hands. Having finished the confrontation with the boy, the killer, afraid of him, begins to retreat back. He falls to the ground, looking up at the winner. The killer asks the guy if he is crazy. People are bustling around a stopped bus, the police are recording eyewitness statements, and orderlies are dragging stretchers for the victims. The rescued girl is taken by her mother. She looks anxiously towards the bus, apparently worried about her hero. He approaches the killer lying on the floor. He begs him not to come closer. He is very scared. The schoolboy who frightened him asks if he wants to take the knife for himself, but the killer, huddled under a chair in fear, says that Fan can keep it. Fan gets off the bus. John sits next to the bus, clasping his knees with his hands and, out of shock, having trouble understanding where he is. John is shocked to hear Fan's greeting, and his imagination begins to paint a terrifying picture. In his imagination, Fan, or rather Chen, whose body Fan possessed, appears in completely red colors with a cleaver in his hand and a crazy smile. In reality, Fan also extends his hand to the shocked Zhang. John twitches and trembles. He cannot understand what to do, still in the grip of his fears. Continuing to shake, he pronounces the word hello syllable by syllable and extends his hand to Fan in response. Because of his fear, Jean does not realize that one of Fan's hands is cut and therefore cannot immediately understand what is so sticky in his hand. Realizing that there is blood on his hand, Jean becomes even more scared. The nurse sees that the student's hand is wounded, takes him aside, and begins bandaging him. She admires the guy's endurance. Fan says that pain is a kind of training for the mind, and since his mind is strong, he has no problem with it. The nurse is shocked by the student's answer, but maintains a friendly appearance. She wonders if the guy is really so strange, or if she just imagined it. At this time, 2 policemen are leading a detained killer in handcuffs past them. The killer notices a guy being bandaged by a nurse. The maniac is frightened by the very sight of Fan and begins to scream. Screaming, he begins to run away from Fan. 2 policemen stop him, and Fan and the nurse watch in bewilderment. One of the police officers approaches Fan and says that his bravery deserves a reward. The cop says the department will contact the school and praise Fan, but doesn't finish. The boy quickly says goodbye to the policeman and says that he needs to go to school. He is late. The law enforcement officer admires the boy's fortitude and decides to remind his son to study harder when he comes home. Still, he decides to run after the guy and say that he doesn't have to go to school today. The policeman will take him to the hospital and call the school. Fan shocks the man by telling him his philosophy of pain as a workout that makes him stronger. The policeman lets the student go and realizes that something is wrong with him. Fan enters Chung's classroom and looks around. The class is practically empty. Most of the seats are free. He can sit wherever he wants. Fan finds a place for himself, pushes his chair back, and sits down. No one is paying attention to him yet. To the sounds of schoolchildren talking, the guy lies down on his desk and indulges in memories. Fan's mother asks if her son can go to school like a normal child his age. The doctor replies that ordinary children go to school, but her son is mentally ill. The same one sits like a doll on the sofa and watches the dialogue. A mother is very upset that her child cannot attend school. A pen is stuck into Fan's hand, pulling him out of the world of painful memories. Chung's classmate says he crossed the line at his desk and deserved to be punished. She says that she warned him that if he crossed the line, she would hit him, and waits for Chung to react somehow to the blow. He imagines how the target of her bullying should react, get upset, or even cry. The fan in Chung's body, however, does not react in any way to the fact that there is a pen stuck in his hand. This puzzles the girl, the main whiner of the class, who continues to act as if this means nothing to him. Annoyed by the lack of response, she decides to push harder. This amuses Fan. It reminds him of the jokes that were played on him in the mental hospital. Even more surprised by Fan's words, the classmate continues to press on the handle, although traces of blood are visible on the pierced jacket. She doesn't understand how her classmate can't react when she's pushing with all her might. As soon as she removes the pen from the wound, blood sprays out and hits the girl's face. A frightened classmate runs away down the corridor, covered in tears and stained with blood. The guy with blue hair tells Zhang that the main weakling of the class scared his girlfriend. He tells him not to worry. He will beat Chen and drag him to the toilet after class. Frightened, Zhang begins to tell him not to do this under any circumstances. Chen is crazy. Zhang's friend is perplexed. It's already clear from Chen that he is abnormal. Just look at how he dresses. Fan comes up to them and extends his hand to say hello since they love to play with Chen. His good-natured face shows no danger at all. Zhang's blue-haired friend decides that Chen must be crazy for thinking he can just come up and say hello like that. Zhang, however, gets up and greets Chen in the most friendly way possible. Zhang's friend senses the fear in his behavior and cannot understand what is happening. The teacher comes to the class and sternly asks who has learned the poem. The students sit very quietly because this teacher is famous for her vile character. Seeing the lack of takers, she decides to call Chen to recite a poem. Blue-haired is sure that now Chen will be publicly humiliated. Fan stands up and, without blinking an eye, apologizes for not memorizing the poem. Other students are shocked by his courage. How could he say such a thing to a teacher from whom they themselves hide behind books? The teacher is about to start scolding the student, but meets his eyes and falters. She suddenly feels cold. She feels that something is wrong with this student. Perhaps he is abnormal. Chen asks permission to sit down with a smile. His smile has a bad effect on the teacher. Unable to control herself, the teacher, adjusting her glasses, allows the guy to sit down. Fan thanks for the permission and sits down. No one in the class can understand how their classmate got off so easily. After the lesson, all the students go about their business. Several students sleep right at their desks. Some chat, some read a book. At this time, Fan is squatting at the socket and looking at the key. A bully with blue hair comes up to him and asks what's wrong with him today. He wants to know what Chen did to his friend Zhang and the strict teacher. He puts his hand on his classmate's shoulder. Fan, however, does not react in any way. This infuriates the bully. He understands less and less what is happening. In an effort to get answers from Chen, he grabs him by the collar and starts to bother him. But he continues to look at the key. Fan says that training with electricity will help them become stronger and wants to put the key in the socket. The classmate continues to hold Chen by the collar and says that he must really be crazy if he wants to insert the key into the socket. But Fan still inserts the key into the socket, not the smartest action, which is not worth repeating unless you are crazy. The guy with blue hair realizes too late that there really is a real psycho in Chen's body, and he receives an electric shock. Under the influence of the current, he begins to shake and wave his arms. One of the classmates decides that this is some kind of dance. He asks to be taught how to dance and touches the electrocuted man's back, and himself becomes an element of the circuit. Seeing several people repeating strange movements, 2 more school children want to learn. After some time, the whole class joins in the electric dance. Fan pulls the key out of the socket and says that because the current is too weak, his training is ineffective. Turning around, he sees all his classmates who have received injuries from the current. He decides that they are very tired because they studied for a long time and advises them not to sleep on the floor so as not to catch a cold. Since he needs to go to the toilet, he simply jumps over his classmates and leaves the classroom. At this time, the math teacher walks to class with a cheerful gait and hums a melody. Today, his favorite lesson is trigonometry. Encouraged, with a wide smile, he enters the classroom and greets the students. His books and drawing equipment fall from his hands to the ground with a crash when he sees what is happening in the classroom. The room resembles a massacre. There is not a single living person. The teacher just stands and looks at it all with his mouth open. When he comes to his senses a little and calls 911, he automatically starts speaking a memorized text about trigonometric functions. Only then, having come to his senses, he says that all the students are unconscious and gives the address. Fan watches the ambulances arrive and take the children to the hospital and wonders how this could have happened. As soon as he went to the toilet, all the students in the class fainted indeed. High school is a cruel place. In the school courtyard, students discuss the strange incident with Chen's class and the fact that he was the only one who managed to avoid going to the hospital. Fan, walking through the schoolyard, hears a woman's voice calling Chen from behind a tree. Remembering that he is now Chen, Fan approaches the tree and asks if he was called. Embarrassed, with reddened cheeks, the girl comes out from behind the tree. She has some business with Chen. Fan cannot understand what they want from him. Such situations are unusual for him. He asks if everything is okay, to which the girl replies that the problem is with her. Behind her back, she clutches an envelope with a heart. Someone's hand quickly snatches the envelope from her hand. Scoffing, the guy with the earring in his ear begins to ask if this is really a love letter. Garanjai's boyfriend is the local school bully. Accompanied by 2 henchmen, he continues to bully the schoolgirl by asking if the letter is for Chen. She asks the hooligans to stop and return her love letter. Garanjai mockingly raises the letter above his head. The girl tries to take the letter, but he is very tall. Her height is not enough, even if she jumps. Fan jumps up and, having described an arc around Tang, takes the letter from him, leaving him completely bewildered. The school's main bully says he will let Chen go if he reads the letter in front of everyone. Fan, with his usual spontaneity, asks the girl if she wants her letter to be read in front of everyone. The girl shakes her head. She is upset. Tears flow from her eyes. Fan states that if the girl is against it, he will not read her letter in front of everyone. Garanjai's fist hits the tree trunk above Fan's head with a loud sound. Hanging over Chen's body, he asks if he will read the letter. Fan is about to answer something, but then he is interrupted by a girl's scream. Fearing for her lover, she asks to read the letter so that Chen will not be beaten. But Fan says that the bullies can't beat him, so there's no point in listening to them. This angers Garanzi. He does not see Chen as a threat and thinks that together with his minions, he can easily deal with him. One of the hooligans insults Chen. He can't wait to teach a lesson to a man who allows himself too much. Fan casually strikes with his left hand the tree trunk that his opponent had previously hit. When Fan hits the tree trunk, a crack appears that literally breaks the trunk. Garen and his minions watch in amazement as the huge tree breaks and falls. 2 students ran as fast as they could to call the teacher for help. As soon as he stopped, they said that Garanji was again mocking Chen Yang at the school entrance. The teacher's furious as the headmaster. He intends to teach the strictest lesson to Gurn. The teacher and 2 students rush to stop Garen. The teacher has already rolled up his sleeves. Having reached the scene of events, they see a picture that makes them stand still with their mouths open. Chen looms over Garen and teaches him manners, leaning on the trunk of the tree that he knocked down. 2 henchmen stand bowing before Chen. Chen tells Garen to repeat after him that taking other people's things and bullying the weak is bad. The frightened hooligan, turning pale, repeats Chen's phrase exactly. Then he tells Gareth to repeat that if he wants to read someone else's letter, he must ask the owner for permission. The frightened Garrett, looking at the trunk of the tree that Chen had fallen, repeats this. Chen slaps him on the cheeks with an envelope and says that since he is too skinny, he needs to go home and eat. Scared to death and shaking, Garen Z agrees with Chen on everything. After Chen let them go, Garen and his 2 henchmen quickly run away. The teacher asks the students who called him for help if he understood everything correctly. When asked if it was Chen who was bullying Garen Z, the students sharply nod their heads. Chen hands the letter to the student who wrote it and asks to take it back, while the teacher and 2 students watch with wide eyes. The blushing girl says that the letter is actually addressed to Chen. Fan in Chen's body, referring to life lessons from Jean, says that he recognized a love letter in the pink envelope. The girl says that she loves Chen and asks him to become her boyfriend. Off-screen, the principal shouts that he does not allow any love in the school, and 2 students try to restrain him. But Fan in Chen's body unexpectedly refuses the girl, shocking her. He says his life's goal is to train to become the strongest man in the world. He hurts the poor girl by saying that she doesn't deserve him. The girl runs away from the guy in tears, saying that he doesn't deserve her. Fan, looking at how the girl runs away from him in her own manner, cannot understand what he said wrong. He remembers the words of his roommate that it is impossible to understand the girl. The director and 2 students continue to watch the entire scene, calling Fan a loner. Fan, clutching an unread letter in his hands, wonders if he forgot about something. He decides that whatever he's forgotten about isn't that important, and leaves, with the principal dragging the 2 students away from Fan in the background. Stills from Chen Yang's memories. He loves charming things and is weak, for which he is bullied and called names at school. But there is a girl who appreciates Chen and pays attention to him. She believes that he is not like everyone else. He loves her and hopes to one day confess his love to her. On his knees, he dreams of the day when she confesses her love to him. At that very moment, he will undoubtedly agree to become her boyfriend. This is in sharp contrast to the behavior of Fan, who in this situation called the girl unworthy. A large building with a red cross rises above the city. The doctor bent over a sick student from Chen's class who had been electrocuted to begin the operation. He wanted to cut his clothes. Hearing that his clothes are going to be cut, the student immediately comes to his senses. He shouts that the clothes are very expensive. He spent a lot of money on them. After this, his strength runs out and the schoolboy falls helplessly on the couch. The doctor shouts at the patient the guy's condition is completely his fault, and after his death his parents will buy him paper clothes. In the hospital room, the students discuss and then lose consciousness. They figure out that at the beginning of the chain stood Yang Hu Tiang, a guy with blue hair. He is indignant at how students can blame him if another person put the key in the socket. Yang says that he touched Chen, and he said that he wanted to put the key in the socket, but he did not expect the guy to be serious. The blue-haired man confidently claims that everything happened because of Chen. The students look around for Chen in the ward, but he is nowhere to be seen. Then Yang says that Chen is probably in the intensive care unit, because if he received such serious injuries, then the culprit of the incident is generally dying. One of the students nervously suggests that Chen may have died. There was silence in the ward, each of his classmates trying to comprehend the death of a local loser. Students recall that although Chen did not dress typical, he often gave them snacks, and school bullies missed the target of bullying. Suddenly there is a loud knock. The students turn to the door. They are trying to figure out who it could be. Some think the doctors have come, others are waiting for their parents. The door opens and Chen looks into the room, alive and unharmed. Classmates are shocked by the arrival of a friend because they already thought that he had died, but he looks better than all of them. The hero of the occasion says that he looked for them for a very long time. He believes that they were hospitalized because they overdid it in their studies. The victims assess Chen's condition. He is absolutely unharmed and quite cheerful. The one who is not being shocked takes snacks from his bag for all his classmates, fried sausages and a bag of soy milk.
Young wonders what this clever trick is. How did the guy manage to avoid injury?
Zheng, still apprehensive, asks Chen to call him brother, asking him not to blame his friend and just give them snacks. Blue-haired is shocked by how politely his friend treats the former victim of bullying. Messages from a special group begin to arrive on the phones of school bullies. Yang looks at the phone, not understanding what reality he finds himself in. The group posted photos of Chen teaching the former main bully of the school about life. Hiding his phone, Young has no hesitation in thanking the new school boss for the meal and visit. Hospital roof. One of the patients decided to commit suicide. As he falls from the building, he thinks how his wife, with whom he has been married for so many years, could do this to him. It's a sunny day. The hospital courtyard is filled with people. Chen shows what the tree he cut down with one blow looked like. At this time, a suicide who jumped from the roof flies past the window. Chen's classmates see a suicide bomber flying by, but Chen cannot understand the reason for their reaction for some time. Noticing the suicide, Chen rushes to him with lightning speed. A moment later, he is already firmly grabbing the falling man's hand. In front of his classmates, Chen confidently clung to the suicide's hand, holding him from falling with one hand. A crunch is heard. The arm breaks, unable to withstand much weight, but Chen does not pay attention to it. With a broken arm, he drags the hanging suicide man into the window of the ward. Everyone in the ward is surprised how an ordinary person can do this. The savior asks the suicide sitting on the floor about the reasons for his action. He coughs and cannot understand why Chen saved him because he has a fatal disease and will soon die. With his head in his hands, he reveals that his wife is having an affair and she forced him to end the marriage. The savior pats the terminally ill man on the head and says that in a difficult situation, you need to first cry and then figure it out. The schoolboy's words resonate in the soul of a desperate man, and tears appear in his eyes. Still crying, he hugs Chen's leg and presses himself against it. Chen calmly pats the crying man's head with his hand. The orderlies and the doctor run into the room. He is surprised how, by some miracle, the suicide was saved. The doctor asks the hero of the story how he managed to do this. At this time, the orderly takes away the rescued Chen, who still continues to cry. Zhang notices that there is something wrong with Chen's body and tells the boy and the doctor that his arm is broken. Chen is surprised that his arm is broken. He didn't even pay attention to it, although his arm is bleeding. The other children are surprised by Chen's self-control and don't understand how he can be so calm. Chen tells the doctor that he has nothing to worry about. He will heal himself and he shouldn't waste his time. The doctor is very surprised by the guy's words, what it means that he is used to it and how he is going to cure himself. Zhang and Yang call Chen their boss and write praising posts about him to the class group. Chen is undergoing surgery. The operating lamp lights up. The boy says it's just a broken bone and no anesthesia is needed. Lying on the couch, he tells doctors that pain only strengthens his mind. He says he is familiar with the environment and it is friendly, as are the doctors. The doctor thinks he may be in pain shock and he is going crazy. Before passing out from the anesthesia, Chen tells the doctors that he has no money. During the operation, a blue screen is activated. He reports that the mission was successful and transports Fan back to his body. He is transferred into his body at the same instant in which he was mixed. He looks around for some time and cannot understand where he is. Realizing that he had returned back to the ward, he remembers that Jen asked about the voices in his head. He says that the voice transferred him to a psychopath who loves to dress in an original way. Jean noted that this is unusual. Freed from Fan, Chen enters the school gates. He feels uncomfortable. He looks around with his head, thinking about why Mom is taking so long to park the car. There is a stamping of feet to meet the guy. Local hooligans come out with calm faces. The former whipping boy becomes very scared when a whole crowd appears in front of him. In the crowd can be seen Jung Yang and Garin with 2 henchmen, as well as many other people. The bullies look at their former victim and he panics, not understanding what they want from him. There are so many of them. All the hooligans fall to one knee at once, welcoming the new informal head of the school. Chen is not at a loss. He does not understand why the bullies did this. The scene of the guys kneeling in front of Chen looks very impressive. The girl who previously wrote him a love message is watching this from behind a tree. She decides that Chen is very brave and she doesn't deserve him. Headquartered in the city of Mianhai, there is a dispute inside over the increasing intelligence of the cursed creatures. Taojia, a 9th-level street fighter, Liu Heitian, is sure that this is impossible. Mao-san, the 9th-level yard fighter, Lin Taming, says that if this were true, they would have been wiped off the face of the earth. The man sitting at the head of the table declares that he is quite serious. Yuchi, the courtyard advisor, Shisong, ponders what might happen if the creature's intelligence increases. A fist falls on the table, stopping Yuchi. The growing intelligence was confirmed by the research team. The weather arc fighter, Yun Xing, starts talking about Buddha and beauty while adjusting his luxurious beard. The chairman of the meeting, nicknamed Cyclops, cuts him off just as Yuchi had cut him off before, leaving Xing in complete shock. Cyclops explains that as the intelligence of the cursed creatures increases, a fighter of the same level will no longer be able to defeat the same creature. This means that everyone in the city could be in danger. The chairman says they have already alerted the police. Mao-san believes that the lower level cannot cope with this, and their help will be needed. They can all die. So they must return home and say, "We won't know what needs to be said because the chairman, raising his hand, uses his strength to slam Mao-san into the wall." The chairman, the leader of the special forces of the city of Mianhai, says that if those gathered do not want to die, they should hope that new fighters will appear. The office of the head doctor of a psychiatric hospital is noisy. They congratulate him on his birthday. The hospital staff prepared him a big cake with candles, and they had a lot of fun. The head of the clinic thanks the staff for celebrating his birthday with him. He is very glad that he can celebrate his birthday this time. The hospital team asks the head of the clinic to make a wish. Sure, with his head bowed and hands clasped in a prayer position, asks that he have a quiet day today. The orderlies, in a panic, say that the patients in the damned ward are again trying to harm themselves. Shy Darkening thinks that he wants to do something bad. John and Fan, along with other patients, staged a rally. They are holding posters with some kind of sketchy drawing that looks like glasses in their hands and demanding something. Based on the drawings, the orderlies bring them 2 eggs and a sausage along with a quail egg. The patients continue to hold placards in their hands and shake their heads from side to side. It seems that this is not what they need at all. In response to the question of what they want, Fan again shows a poster with a drawing that looks like glasses, and John shows a drawing with a circle. Hospital employees cannot understand what is shown in the pictures. They are confused. Finally, the head of the clinic approaches the crowd with a businesslike gait and hands clasped behind his back in his signature manner. The orderlies are very glad that the doctors finally come. They hope that he will help sort it out. Jan and Fan show their drawings, who looks at the drawings for a second. And he says he can't let them have these things. The patients look at each other in unison. It seems that they intend to get what they want, no matter what it takes. They fall to the floor, begin to roll around, whine, and wave the drawings, saying that they want what is depicted on them. Realizing that otherwise they will not calm down, the old man, frowning, agrees to their demand. He tells a young orderly with brown hair to go to the warehouse and bring them what they want. He asks what these patients really want. The ward is not calm again. The sultry couple is training hard. The figure similar to the glasses ordered by Fan turns out to be 50-kilogram dumbbells, and Jean's punching bag, which looks like a circle, hangs on it, happy that they can train in the board. With a loud crack, the dumbbell turns out to be broken. The metal cracked like glass. A large hole appears in the punching bag and the filler spills out onto the floor. John tells his roommate that he has completed his training and is now a qualified fighter. Lil Fan, sitting on a bench, replies that it is very nice of him. A dark underground tunnel with a bunch of rats with red eyes running away from powerful explosions. One of the team that previously went hunting for the monster calls on the forces of nature. He tells them to gather under him by throwing 3 cards into the air. The huge hellhound is overwhelmed by the explosions caused by this technique. Explosions injure the dog. Smoke comes from him, but he stands on his feet. The guy seems small against his background. Other members of his team to fight the monster run up to the fighter. The girl uses a low-level healing and restoration technique, and a yellow-green ball appears in her palms. Using this technique, she heals a guy with a sword and crosses appear next to him, symbolizing the effect of the treatment. He raises 2 fingers as he begins to use his sword technique, the raised fingers glowing blue matching the color of his eyes and jacket. Using a technique, he launches a glowing sword at the dog. The cursed creature roars loudly when a glowing sword is stabbed into it. The hound, wounded by the sword, swings its huge clawed paw. The guy with the cards realizes that the hound is about to attack. His comrade in a tracksuit restrains the hound. A figure in a golden robe appears above him, holding his paw with his hands. But the hound manages to hit Xiang Ying and flies a long distance. A loud sound is heard as her body crashes into the tunnel wall. The team medic is seriously wounded. Blood is gushing from her mouth and tears are forming in her eyes. She sinks into a pool of blood, leaving a depression where she hit the wall. The fighter with the sword shouts to his comrades that the blow of the cursed creature is not easy to endure and Xiang Ying needs to be taken away from here. He uses a different technique and, engulfed in lightning, throws 3 cards forward. Cards fly forward along blue discharges. They turn into energy. The blast of blue energy injures the cursed creature, but does not seem to cause any serious damage. The hound, with all its might, falls on the figure in the golden monastic robe. It becomes harder to contain it. The guy with the rosary starts to sweat. The hound growls, stretching its muzzle in an ominous grin that resembles a smile. The guy holding the hound is overcome with fear when he realizes that she was probably holding back all along. A moment later, his body lies cut in half by a blow from a hound. His comrades look at this picture in horror, realizing that now things are even worse for them. The guy in the blue jacket pushes the carrot guy out of the direction of the hound's strike at the last moment. Pierced by the paw of a huge hound, he tells his comrade to run away immediately. A huge hound takes its paw out of the guy's body. His eyes are closed and a stream of blood flows from his mouth. A guy with a wooden sword stands in front of a huge hound, planning to protect Xiang Ying. Tears form in his eyes as he yells at Xiang Ying to get up. Xiang Ying hears this and opens her eyes. She is badly wounded. There is blood all over her uniform. Protecting Xiang Ying, the guy runs towards the hound with a wooden sword. The sword bursts into flames. With the last of her strength, Xiang Ying uses the treatment and a ball appears above her hand. Xiang Ying's technique heals the guy from running to the hound. Apparently some of his damage is being healed. Xiang Ying's hand falls limply to the ground on the technique. She spent everything she had left. The wooden sword knocked out by the hound, describing an arc, flies to the side. The hound stands over the fallen man with a sword sticking out of her shoulder, but she appears to be otherwise okay. Pressed by a huge clawed paw in a pool of blood, he repeats the name Xiang Ying. With his last breath, he calls upon the forces from the blood of his ancestors to crush the devils. His bloodshot eyes begin to glow reddish-orange. His entire body is engulfed in a glow, releasing energy and exploding. A powerful explosion occurs. Behind the sounds of the explosion, the growl of the cursed creature is heard. The damned creature was badly wounded, burned, but still alive. With his tail between his legs, the exhausted hellhound leaves the battlefield. On a sunny day in the courtyard of a psychiatric hospital, one of the patients runs after butterflies with a cheerful laugh. At this time, lying in the grass, John is busy with an important matter. He counts the ants, coming to the logical conclusion that there are a lot of them. Fan sits nearby in a meditative position, absorbed in himself. The blue screen informs Fan that he has obtained a deadly level chi training technique, and his body can now absorb the power of heaven and earth. He hears Jean's voice, who wants to show him something. Jan shows Fan the ant and says that it seems to be sick. White-haired, holding an ant in his hands, notices that something is wrong with Fan. Fan's body is engulfed in blue flames. His face is red from tension. The screen reports that the chi technique is a skill with enormous power. The whirlwind can explode. The roommate, wanting to help Fan, who is red with tension, sticks a needle into his head. Jan uses the galactic transition acupuncture technique. Fan's entire head and shoulders are covered in needles. Fan's face turns extremely red when John sticks another needle into him. Finally, Fan can't stand it. A scream bursts out of his chest and needles fly in different directions. John barely manages to dodge the flying needles, falling and hitting the ground. Behind him, a poor crying ant is pierced by a needle in the grass. The blue screen indicates that the absolute vision technique has been unlocked, which eliminates the possibility of an explosion. Wiping away sweat, Fan says that he trained with a voice in his head. It was very uncomfortable, but John helped him. John, lying on the ground, listens carefully to what his comrade says. Quickly jumping up to Fan, John asks how he is feeling, whether the acupuncture technique helped the galactic transition. Fan smiled at John and said that he was feeling better. The acupuncture technique helped. Fan says that he has a problem. He is very hungry. His stomach is making strange sounds. An ant researcher comes up with an idea. Fan is puzzled by what idea came to his friend's mind. Jean, holding an ant with 2 fingers, offers to eat the poor insect. He says that the ants are like crab sticks. He has eaten them before. A little sour, but quite edible. Fan is surprised by such unusual facts and wants to know if it is true. Jan puts a squeaking ant into Fan's open mouth. The nurse calls everyone to gather in the dining room. It's lunchtime. Hearing the announcement, John throws the ant into the grass. He takes Fan to lunch, saying that real crab sticks are waiting for them there. The patients are shocked by Fan's unprecedented appetite. He ate all their food. John tells them not to worry. Fan will throw up and give them back their food. Some patients think that would be a good thing. Nurse Fauna says that he needs to eat less, otherwise he will have a stomachache. The eternally hungry patient, however, does not listen to her and continues to eat. The nurse calls for help from the puzzled doctor standing nearby. The patient tells the doctor that he is still hungry. The doctor asks if Fan is suffering from an eating disorder. Hungry Jean, with a crash, bites off a piece of a tablespoon. The doctor decides it might be an eating disorder as Fan crunches on the remains of his spoon. The nurse stands nearby in shock, her mouth open. In her hands, she holds a bunch of trays from which Fan ate all the food. A man from a special group of the investigative department clicks a camera. He photographs a defeated fighter with a hound wearing a blue jacket. Employees inspect the entire tunnel. One of them collects what is left of the exploded guy. Sin's body remains sitting against the wall. A figure with a cigarette in his mouth is watching the work of the department behind the blue ribbon. Having assessed the scene, the Cyclops becomes furious and swears at the hellhound. He calls on the phone and reports that the creature, despite its numerical superiority, dealt with 4 fighters who graduated from the university with honors. Cyclops reports that the cursed creature of the 2nd level knew that it should first attack the healer in order to incapacitate the team. Throwing the bull, he says that fighters of the same level will now not be able to defeat the wiser damned creatures. He thinks that the fighter must have escaped through the sewer using the smell of sewage to hide his scent. But the good news is that the dog is wounded. The Cyclops extinguishes the goby by stepping on it and says that the sewer is nearby and it is better to be on the alert. Having finished the dialogue, he ends the phone call by pressing the red button on his mobile phone. One Eye tells the employee standing nearby to inform the information center so that the monster's danger level is increased. An employee with glasses writes down the chief and says that everything will be done. He is embarrassed, but he must convey the request of the families of the dog's victims to the commander. He puts his hand on the shoulder of the guy with glasses and says that the remains will be given to the families. He asks to tell them that they worked well and deserved their place. As he leaves, however, he adds that the fighters were simply a little stupid and stubborn. Raising his hand, he forbids telling the last phrase to the relatives of the monster's victims. In the office of the head of the clinic, Shai hits the table with his hand. He says that he will call a special department to throw the dog out. Slamming the doors, an orderly bursts into the office and delivers the bad news. John and Fan have driven the cooks to the point of losing consciousness. For a second, the head sitting at the table trembles and clutches his heart. However, he quickly returns to his usual form and asks the orderly to tell him what happened. The orderlies drag the tireless eater away from the table. The doctor tells him not to allow him to eat inedible foods and that the patient needs an examination. Fan is led out of the dining room arm in arm. One of the patients good-naturedly asks if Fan will return his food to him. With signs, the best friend shows Fan that he has an idea. He swings hard while sitting at the table, preparing to hit his head on it. John begins banging her head on the table with loud sounds, attracting the attention of the orderlies. There are cries for help, calling for the orderlies. Some of the patients rejoice at the performance. The doctor is frozen in bewilderment. The men leading the patient by the arms leave him unattended and run to the table, while everyone is in a panic trying to stop Fan, who conveniently forgot to run away. As he runs, he gives his friend a thumbs up, thanking him for his help. John, who is being carried under the arms by 2 orderlies, shows his thumb in response. Bumps appeared on his forehead, but he helped his friend free himself. At that time, work is in full swing in the kitchen. The cooks are rearranging heavy pots of food. An ominous shadow looms over him and a voice declares that he is hungry. The 2 female chefs look at the source of the voice in horror. Fan, who looks like a monster with a protruding tongue and glowing red eyes, declares that he is hungry and wants human flesh. The women are shocked by what they see. They understand that this is a patient from the same ward. They faint. The hungry patient, who from the outside doesn't seem so scary, tries to understand what happened. The orderly finishes his story. The head doctor says that women should be given an increase of 300 wen as compensation. Having somehow resolved the issue with the cooks, he begins to discuss why Fan is so hungry. The orderly replies that Dr. Wong is still checking Fan in the hope of finding out. The head of the clinic asks to inform him when something becomes clear about Fan's condition. Night falls on the city. The full moon shines brightly on the stars. There is a sewer manhole near the hospital, near the trash cans. The creature that crawled out of the open trash can understands that it is seriously injured. It needs to heal and eat. The hellhound decides to let a kind man take care of her. Growling, she undergoes a huge transformation, clouds of dust rising around her. The hound turns into a cute dog. Her fellow damned animals told her that people like cute creatures similar to the one she turned into. Thinking that when people see a wounded dog, they will not be able to resist, the pestle trains to greet them. A staggering hound in the body of a small cute dog goes to meet stupid people. The dog casts a shadow on the asphalt in the form of a large hound with red eyes. In John and Fan's room, flies are buzzing near the lamps. John tells Fan that his watch is broken again. It shows the 29th of February, but the nurse told him that it is already the 2nd of March. He needs to go to the store and fix it, but since the warranty has expired, he needs money to repair the watch for free. Fan and John have no money. John says that he heard that you can earn a lot of money through kidnapping. Fan is interested in who his friend can kidnap in the hospital. He wants to kidnap Fan, but he wonders who will give him money for a patient in a mental hospital. He remembers that his friend must have a girlfriend. He will pretend that he will kidnap Fan, and when she fixes his watch, he will let him go. John is very pleased with his plan, but his roommate declares that he does not have a girlfriend. White-haired asks how this can be, because Fan told him that the presenter on TV is his girlfriend. Fan replies that this is his wife. At this time, someone wants to jump into the palau. 2 dog paws are visible in the window of the room. John says that then his plan is canceled because people say that you can live longer if you don't take your wife's money. Someone is whining outside the window. The would-be kidnapper thinks he hears a puppy barking. Fan says that it must be the one outside the window. The hellhound is trying to look as cute as possible to be allowed into the room. John is fascinated by the appearance of the puppy. Fan agrees that the puppy is very cute. The dog, continuing to pretend to be a cute creature, thinks to himself that people are very stupid. John notices that the dog is wounded. There is blood on his ears. He feels sorry for the poor fellow. The hellhound stretched out several floors to reach the room. The patient looking out of the window below cannot understand what it is. John says that the dog's wounds are serious and they better heal them quickly. Fan reminds him that his friend knows acupuncture, and it will definitely help. The hound cannot believe his luck when a set of needles appears. He is sure that he is very lucky. John is about to stick a sharp needle into the dog. Fan sits nearby and watches. The dog's face stops being kind when they don't see him. He thinks that he will eat his saviors after they cure him. A needle pierces his head and blood splashes from the wound. The dog is trembling while lying on the bed. John, puzzled, asks if this means that he is getting better. Fan replies that this is probably how it should be. The demon does not understand why he is paralyzed. He continues to tremble when John says that he will add more needles. The paralyzed dog can only watch as the acupuncture master raises his hand over him, with needles clamped between his fingers. The animal throws itself into heat, then into cold. It seems to him that he is dying in despair. He thinks that this is a hallucination. John watches with interest the paralyzed dog lying on the bed covered in needles. Strange sounds are heard again from Fan's stomach sitting on the bed next to him. His roommate notices this and asks Fan if he is hungry. Fan replies that he is hungry. His stomach is empty. His stomach continues to make the sounds of a dying whale. The blue screen informs the owner that she has discovered a creature with a huge reserve of energy that will last him for 3 days. The creature is right in front of him. Nearby lies a hellhound in the form of a small dog and is still trembling from the many needles that John stuck into it. Fan looks at the dog and realizes that he can be eaten. The screen informs him that the creature is non-toxic and edible, has a second energy level, and even offers several recipes. Fan's eyes glow ominously as he looks at the dog, and he puts his hand to his stomach. The dog is trying to understand what is happening, why Fan's face has changed. Fan tells his roommate that the dog is a very cute dog, but John also changes in her face and an ominous gleam appears in her eyes. Fan says that if the dog is cute, it means it's very tasty. Jean agrees with him. The dog is shocked by what he heard. His fur stands on end. The hellish creature cannot understand the logic of his new acquaintances. For them, cute means tasty. The dog wonders whether they are people at all. The dog, rising to its paws, trembles and thinks that this is impossible. He doesn't understand how friends can want to eat such a cute creature. John abruptly pulls the needles out of the dog, giving him unpleasant sensations. He says he is stopping acupuncture, and there is no reason to save the animal. Fan says that he trusts John, and since they have no way to save the dog, his friend finishes for him by saying that they will wait until the dog dies and cook. The dog understands that he has fallen into the hands of not quite adequate people. John puts his hand on the dog's face and tells him to rest in peace. In all seriousness, John begins to say goodbye to the dog who is destined to leave the world of the living. The hellhound decides that the humans are too arrogant and that no matter what they will die. John notes with surprise that the dog is still alive, turning to Lin Fan. Fan, looking at the dog carefully, says that it doesn't matter. He points to the dog's wounds and says that they are bleeding, so the animal will die soon. Jan says that they will just wait for his death as long as necessary and then have dinner. The comrade asks Fan to leave him at least the dog's thigh. The hellish dog begins to lose patience. His fangs protrude as Jean and Fang begin to discuss how tasty his meat will be. Finally, he decides that he has been holding back long enough, and with a roar, he turns into a huge hound. His new acquaintances seem only delighted with this transformation. John screams with delight. The hellhound threatens to tear the pathetic people to pieces because they treated him badly when he was so cute. The reason for John's delight is that he is sure that now he and his neighbor will have enough meat for two. The hound lunges at John, opening its huge mouth, threatening to swallow the acupuncturist whole. Fan prevents the dog from doing this by quickly grabbing his fang. For several moments, the hound does not understand what is happening. Fan, holding two fangs with his hands, throws the hound on the floor of the chamber. Continuing to hold onto the fang with one hand, he tells the damn creature that such a big dog should know that biting people is bad. The hound lying on the floor cannot understand the situation, how an ordinary person could do such a thing. The hellhound decides to attack again. He is already thinking about how he will bite off the stupid man's hand. The hound's huge teeth are about to bite through the hand of the man who is still holding the dog's fang. But Fan's hand turns out to be unexpectedly strong, and the hellish creature fails to damage it. Jan wants to touch the soft fur of the hound and asks his friend to let him. Fan says that the hound now doesn't bite and can be petted. Jean is very happy about this. The thought that some hairy little man will stroke him makes the hound furious. But Fan holds the hound tightly, and Jean, going up to the dog, strokes it so that it does not squirm. For a cursed second-level creature, this is very humiliating. Holding the hound with one hand, Fan swings his other hand, and he sharply hits the monster's teeth. A loud sound is heard. The whole body of the hound sways. With a crash, two broken fangs fly out of the hellhound's mouth. Fan says that he warned the creature that he should bite people. Bad, he warns the hound not to show aggression towards his friend. John is glad that with his teeth knocked out, the dog has become very obedient. He hugs the big dog with his arms wide open. The hound thinks that in front of him is a very high-level fighter. The dog, lying on the floor, understands that Fan is extremely dangerous. He fantasizes that he will make people suffer twice as much as he does now. Now, Jan is dissatisfied. He wants to see the dog spin its tail like a propeller and not wag it from side to side. The hound mentally prays to ask him to stop bullying. In despair, he even thinks of suing people for violating the rights of dogs. Fan, holding the hound by the fang, forcefully pulls it towards himself. He easily pushes the hound's huge head towards him. Patting the hound on the face, the guy says that such a big dog should know how to twirl his tail to make it cuter. He continues to smack the hound on the head, and Fan's stroking nearly breaks the hound's skull. In desperation, the hellhound decides to do what is asked of him. He actually begins to wag his tail. John is delighted with how the dog does this, while the dog burns with shame, standing with his front paws on the bed. He pets the dog again and says that this is a wonderful dog. Continuing to praise the dog, John says that his meat must be very tasty. His roommate is also sure that the dog's meat will definitely be tasty. John is pleased that the dog has increased in size so much, otherwise there would not be enough meat for two. Fan looks dreamily at the dog and says that this cutie will become their food. The hound listens in horror as patients praise their future lunch. Jan asks how they will cook the dog. He likes dog meat fried with chili sauce. The friend says that he likes it roast, but the woman in his head said that it would taste better with plum wine. Jan notices that they don't have a fire to cook the dog, but the head doctor said that the meat should be eaten well cooked. The hellhound sighs with relief, hoping to at least escape death in this way. Fan looks up at the electric lamps next to which flies continue to fly. He suggests to his friend that he use electricity to fry meat. John ponders Fan's original idea for some time. And turning to his friend, he joyfully says that the idea should work. When he was helping a friend with electrical training, the meat smelled very good. Fan said that the dog meat would also smell very good. Having turned gray, the dog thinks that he must have gone to hell in the human world. The fan holds the hound above his head and electric discharges pass through it with a characteristic sound. This is a very dangerous way to fry meat and should not be done. While enjoying the sight of the hound being roasted, he declares that using electricity instead of fire is very cool. Other patients, looking at the flickering light in the room of their friends, madly decide that they were throwing a party, but they didn't invite them. Current discharges continue to pass through the hound's body, and smoke begins to emanate from it. John's mouth waters when he smells the fried meat. Standing in the current discharges that do not cause him the slightest harm, Fan declares that it is almost ready. The hound in his thoughts swears at the people, calling them devils in the flesh. The powerful dog's paw, engulfed in electric discharges, rises, and he falls limply. The monster dies, tortured by 2 patients of a clinic for the mentally ill. The symbolic picture shows the grave of a large dog over which his soul goes to heaven. Sparking wires are disconnected from the hound and hang in the air. Jean, examining the body of the demonic creature, asks if it was cooked well. His friend replies that he can check. The chest part of the dog's carcass is cleared of fur and skin. Of course, real dogs cannot be eaten. These are our friends. Jan and Fan happily inhale the delicious aroma emanating from the dog's carcass. They begin to eat dog meat with great appetite. Someone is walking with a flashlight along the hospital corridor of the floor where the light has gone out. New nurse Lu Zhang cannot understand what happened and what is the reason for the disappearance of the light. Colleagues advised him to check out a special room on this floor. Having no experience in this hospital, the nurse is perplexed as to what is so special about this room as he looks inside. The light of the orderly's flashlight penetrates the ward, dispersing the darkness. The orderly sees Fan and Chen next to the monster's huge head. The frightened orderly backs away, realizing that the patients are holding their heads separated from their bodies in their hands. In the darkness, their eyes sparkling and continuing to hold the dog's head, Fan and Jean ask the orderly if he wants to join. In horror, the orderly falls to the floor, dropping the flashlight from his hands. He runs away from the ward, shouting that patients eat human flesh. The flashlight remains lying on the floor. Mr. Shai walks down the hospital corridor ahead, asking the orderly if he is sure of what he saw. The nurse, being dragged under the arms of other orderlies, says that he definitely saw a head that was staring at him terribly. The head of the clinic asks whether the switch has already been repaired. Upon hearing an affirmative answer, he turns on the light. Entering the illuminated room, Mr. Shai says that everything is basically clear. Fan and Jean, lying on their beds, greet him in one voice. In a stern voice, he asks special patients what they do. Then his gaze falls on an object that was not in the room before. He asks Fan and Chen what it is. Fan and Chen also unanimously answer that this is a rug made of dog hair. On the floor in the room lies the uneaten fur of the poor dog. Shai takes the fur in his hands and examines it. The appearance of the fur reminds him of something. The head doctor cannot understand what the fur of the damn beast is doing in the hospital room. Sure, holding a piece of fur in his hands, asks Fan and John what they were doing. Those lying on the bed again answer the head of the clinic that they were just sleeping. She asks incredulously, did they get out of bed? Fan and Jean shake their heads, claiming that they were just sleeping and didn't know about anything. The orderly, without leaving behind Shai, says that he definitely saw the head. The old doctor begins to get angry. With red fire in his eyes, he asks Fan what he has under the blanket. Fan throws off the blanket, showing that there is nothing there, but there is a glow coming from under his clothes. Sure, with a red face, covering his eyes with his hand, tells the patient that the glow gives him away. Fan pretends that he doesn't understand how the flashlight ended up under his clothes. The head of the clinic demands that the patient give him the flashlight, and he obeys. Turning off the flashlight, Mr. Shai sighs, thinking about something. Having dealt with the flashlight, he wants to continue asking about the fur. But the patients pretend that it is time for them to sleep, not allowing the head to continue the dialogue. Meter Shu sighs heavily. Thinks about the fact that he is not old yet. He is only 50 years old, but since he has been working in the hospital, he has turned gray. Having finished with painful thoughts, he says goodnight, turns off the light, and leaves the room. The doors slam, and John and Fan are finally left alone in the room. After everyone has left, they stop pretending and get up. Fan wants to ask Jean something and turns to address him. Jan carefully asks, did Fan have enough dog meat? Fan says that he is full, but he has a question. He wants to know how he manages to hide the needles from the head of the clinic if Fan never succeeds. John explains to the shocked Fan that he hides needles in his luxurious shining hair. Fan thinks about growing his hair as long as he can to hide things in it. John says that would be great. Night City Headquarters Building, Special Defense Units. The leader of the Special Forces stands at the window of the headquarters, thinking that he will grind the monster into powder when he finds it, skins it, and crushes its bones. His head is ready to burst from the sobs of the victims' families. A voice in the earphone tells him that an old man is calling who loves money. The head of the clinic calls to say that his patient killed a monster that the one-eyed man is hunting and asks him to come. The Cyclops is distrustful of the doctor's words. He insists on meeting in person. After thinking, without taking the cigarette out of his teeth, the head of the Special Forces turns around. He goes to the window and dials a special combination on the control panel to open it. He stands at the open window from which a dizzying view opens up. You can hear the whistle of the wind rushing through the open window. Standing by the window, Cyclops pushes off the ground well with his feet. Jumping out of the window while he flies to the ground, he thinks that he has gone crazy since he jumped out of the window in the middle of the night to meet a crazy old man. The new orderly, who was scared by Chen and Fan, is looking for his head under the windows of the clinic. Finally, he sees a huge skull on the ground among bones and scraps of flesh, and someone throws a bone on top of him. The shocked orderly didn't even think that the head was so big at that time. Someone throws another bone from the window. A sound is heard in the night, scaring the already tense orderly. The nurse looks around, hoping to find the source of the sound, thinking to himself that some kind of devilry is happening to him. When he turns to the corpse of a giant creature, the skull is no longer there. The orderly, trembling, points to the place where the skull was and asks the void if he ran away. Unable to stand on his feet, the orderly falls and hits the ground. The guy loses consciousness and remains lying on the ground. Cyclops shows Shai's huge skull, holding it with one hand. He says that if he understood correctly, he found the skull of a cursed hound of the second level and asks Shai how she died. One Eye reads the notebook that Shu gave him and asks if what is written there is true. It looks very incredible that there is a patient who tries to kill himself over and over again, but every time he becomes stronger. Cyclops says that judging by the camera footage, 2 psychos actually killed the damn creature. Shai replies that he has no idea how the patients did it, but apparently the creature was eaten. Out of shock, Cyclops did not immediately understand what she said, but with a smile he repeats that the patients ate the damned hound. Cyclops decides that Fauna and Zhanya have a gift and wants to meet with them. The park of a psychiatric clinic, the sun peeks out from behind the trees. The heroes of the night incident are sitting on the ground and carefully looking at the sun. It seems this is some kind of game. The rules of the game are simple. You need to look carefully at the sun, and whoever blinks first loses. Fan looks at the sun and doesn't seem like it's causing him the slightest discomfort. Jean, on the other hand, holds his eyelids with his hands, unable to hold on any longer. He asks Fan to blink. Fan agrees, turns to Zahn, and says he's finished. Jan, like a child, rejoices at Fan's loss. He jumps and shouts that Fan has lost. Cyclops and Shay are sitting on a bench nearby and watching what is happening. Cyclops thinks that if you look at the sun for a long time, there can be problems with your retina, but Fan is completely fine. He understands that Fan may have a great gift. One Eye, turning to the head physician, says that the guy may be gifted and asks if he can take Fan if this is confirmed. The head doctor cannot contain his emotions when he asks if he is serious when he says this. In his own way, interpreting the words of the chief physician, Cyclops begins to say that if Shai does not trust him. He pats Cyclops on the back and says that he will give him the patient without any problems. Moreover, he is not averse to giving him the second one. The head of the clinic, with barely contained joy, says that the only condition is not to return patients back. However, he notes that the one-eyed man will have to accept the obligation that in the event of unforeseen incidents, the clinic is not at fault. Cyclops continues to think that Shai is worried about the safety of the patients and assures that they will be safe with him. She chuckles and says that it is very good to think to himself that he is more worried not about the patients, but about the employees. One Eye begins to tell that the situation in the city is difficult. Damned creatures are lurking everywhere, and there are fewer and fewer fighters. 2 fighters will not hurt. She again thinks that he is more worried that John and Fan will not destroy the one-eyed man's house. The head of the special services gets up from the bench and says that the damn creatures are getting smarter and have begun to hide under the guise of pets. She sighs and says that he cares about the future of humanity. Cyclops says that there is nothing to worry about. He is a fighter defending this city and will fight for it to the last drop of blood. He promises to stop the damn creatures to prevent them from destroying humanity. Looking at the sky, he thinks that the power of one fighter is limited. The more fighters he attracts, the safer the city will become. Approaching Jean and Fan, the Cyclops asks if they killed the second-level hound last night. Standing above them, he asks a whole series of questions. He wonders how they managed to eat the hound. Looking at each other, the friends try to figure out what to answer him. They answer that they did not eat or kill the hound and that it committed suicide. Cyclops' hand glows orange and he points it towards Fan. He stops his shining hand a few centimeters from Fan's face. Fan looks in admiration at the golden radiance emanating from the one-eyed man's hand. Cyclops notices that Fan did not react to the attack and thinks that despite his mental potential, he can reach a maximum of the third level. The white-headed man moves closer to his friend who is looking at the one-eyed one. John whispers in Fan's ear that the man must have come to train Fan. The Cyclops looks at this scene with some confusion. Friends looking at Cyclops with adoration say that he is a good person. Fan says that he is not suitable for him because he is one-eyed, and it will be difficult for him to train such a demanding student. Fan's phrase breaks Cyclops' brain. He begins to understand how unusual these two patients are. John says that it doesn't matter. He can cure Cyclops, and he will help his friend with training. Cyclops understands that by training they mean their constant near-suicidal attempts. John says that Lil Fan is very strong now and he needs to continue training. Fan nods in agreement. Jean continues to say that when he heals Cyclops' eye, they can train together. The comrade confirms that John can do acupuncture. His skills are excellent and he can cure the eye. John begins to run around Cyclops asking if he wants to cure his eye. Touching his eye, Cyclops thinks that even an international doctor could not cure him. He cannot understand how these two are going to treat him. He agrees to try and sits down on the grass next to Fan, thinking that with the existing strength, playing with acupuncture will not affect him in any way. Studded with needles, Cyclops realizes that he has a strange feeling. Holding the needle between his fingers, Jean shouts that he is using a galactic-level technique. Dancing with a needle in his hands, he talks about the technique of half the Milky Way. Cyclops, while sticking needles into his head, asks about the meaninglessness of the names. They are just for fun. John continues to praise his acupuncture technique. He says he did research for many years before coming up with this technique. Each of his patients said that the acupuncture was done perfectly. Fan confirms that he is the only person on whom John practiced. A faint smile appears on the Cyclops' lips as he realizes that he feels numb. He explains that all this time he thought it was a joke, so he did not activate the protection. He is surprised that the needles were able to affect him. Shouting the name of his technique, Jean sticks the 13th needle into Cyclops' head, who agrees to a new needle. But when the needle sticks into the head of the one-eyed man, he gets the feeling that something is penetrating his brain. Suddenly losing consciousness, he closes his eyes and falls down. Fan instantly picks up the fallen Cyclops with one hand. John is surprised that Cyclops lost consciousness from acupuncture. Upset, he wonders if everything is okay with his Milky Way technique, because Cyclops was the first person he tried it on. John's going to modify it and hopes that next time everything will go much better. He asks Fan if he would like to volunteer. He agrees because he completely trusts John. After some time, John wonders why Fan disconnected from the improved technology. Sitting above two people who have fainted, he wonders what went wrong. He decides that he needs to do more experiments, but he has run out of volunteers. After some time, 3 bodies lie on the ground, passed out: Cyclops, Fan, and John, who decided to experiment on himself. Shai approaches them and wonders where Jean got his year's supply of needles. Looking at the passed-out national-level fighter, Shu begins to fear for the safety of the city. The emergency department in the waiting room is full of people, all busy with their own affairs. The ringing of the landline phone on the reception desk rings through the air. People froze in shock, realizing that this call was special. The staff begins to panic. Are these two from the psychiatric clinic again? On the phone, Shu begins to dictate the address of the hospital, but he is interrupted by saying that the ambulance is on the way. She says that this time he will need 2 cars, since he has 3 people with injuries. Ambulances arrive to the call and take away 3 patients. Ambulance driver Mr. Huang can't get into the car. In front of his eyes, he has a white bandage with traces of blood. The paramedics understand that the driver recently had eye surgery. Despite this, the driver says that he can handle it because it's as easy as shelling pears. The ambulance with the almost blind driver leaves, leaving the head of the She Clinic and 2 orderlies in shock. The ambulance, driven by a man with eye injuries, drives very unevenly and almost crashes into the bushes. Mr. She thinks that the ambulance driver knows what to do, so should he worry, or should he assume that everything is fine? The hospital's vice president, Hua Tian, is surprised by how resilient Fan and Ran are. While watching the operating room, he thinks that perhaps he needs to set up an accident to kill these 2. For thoughts unworthy of a doctor, he slaps himself in the face. With a red hand mark on his face, he wonders how such a thought could even come to his mind. But after a moment, he thinks about the fact that the patients are a complete headache. And once again, with a loud sound, he slaps himself in the face as punishment. All red, he calls Shu and asks if he understood him well last time. Why did he again send his problematic patients to the clinic and even added one person to them? The head of the clinic calmly notes that last time he said to keep Fanjan in the hospital longer so they wouldn't have to go to the hospital again. The vice president says that there will be no order in his hospital while these two are there. Shu, in response, wants to transfer him money as compensation. The vice president is shocked by Shi's generosity and looks at the mobile screen to check. He sees the money transfer information, and Shu asks to leave the patients in the hospital for a few days. Otherwise, he will accuse his colleague of bribery. Realizing that he had been tricked, the vice president could not come to his senses for several moments. Shu ends the dialogue and says goodbye. The phone falls from the hands of the stunned vice president. Having dropped the phone, he yells curses at the entire hospital towards Shu. In the operating room, a blue screen congratulates Fan on moving to the next level and acquiring the appropriate defensive ability. In the hospital corridor, nurses are discussing a patient, an orderly who has lost consciousness after an incident with a beagle's head. Someone is carefully spoon-feeding that same orderly, Liuzi. He tells the girl that she is the best he has ever met. She says that she has gained weight, but in 5 months she will be slim again. The orderly says that he doesn't care whether the girl is fat or thin. He is happy that Uncle Wong brought them together. Liuzi says that he will definitely thank his uncle when he returns home. While the girl is peeling the apple, the orderly must tell the girl some bad news. He says that he cannot have children and asks how the girl feels about this. She, holding out the apple, says that it doesn't matter. They can always take the baby from the orphanage and asks, "Who does Liuzi want, a son or a daughter?" The delighted Liuzi tells his beloved that he would like a daughter. She replies that on the contrary, she would like a son. Liu says that they will do as she wishes. A doctor comes into the room and says that if there are no shocks, the patient will soon be able to go home. At this time, the nurse says that the patients have come to their senses. The doctor orders them to be taken to the ward. To the horror of the orderly, Fan, lying on a gurney, is brought into the ward. Liuzi points his finger at Fan, remembering the troubles that happened to him. Panicking, he says that the patients in the damned ward eat human flesh. Liuzi falls to the floor. The doctor cannot understand what struck him so much. Grabbing the doctor's leg, he asks to be transferred to another room. Waking up, Fan, to the horror of the former orderly, says that he is hungry and wants to eat. Fang and Liuzi lock eyes, which scares the latter to death. He faints again. The doctor asks what is wrong with him. Lying in his room, Cyclops thinks how he got to this point, because with the strength he has, even bullets can't really hit him. He thinks about how he could pass out from Jean's acupuncture while he and Fan are discussing what drinks they will drink. Turning on his side, he ponders how a psycho could knock out the strongest fighter in the city. John and Fan notice that the Cyclops has woken up. John comes up and touches his forehead with a finger. He says that he is very ashamed for not being able to cure the Cyclops' eye. Maybe if he makes a few more attempts, he will succeed. Turning his head to John, the Cyclops allows him to try again if he wants. Jan looks at Cyclops with admiration. He is very glad that he allowed him to try again. He admires what a kind person he is. Fan nods in agreement. Getting down to business, John begins to take needles out of her hair. Fan applauds him when he lets his hair down and holds the needles in his hands and says that he will still cure Cyclops' eye. The orderlies are taking Cyclops covered in needles on a gurney to the intensive care unit. Fan tells Jean not to worry, Cyclops will be fine. Lying on the bed, Cyclops, darker than a cloud, realizes that he has passed out again because of the needles. He remembers that even when the creature of the 9th level broke all his bones, he stood on his feet. John comes to his bed and apologizes for the fact that this time nothing worked out. He asks to try again. John says that after so many unsuccessful attempts, Cyclops does not have to believe him, but he wants to try again. Hearing the agreement, John beams with folded hands and looks at Cyclops with adoration. John, turning to Fan, says that the one-eyed man really trusts him. His comrade nods as a sign of approval. The Cyclops, lying on the bed, thinks that he should try again to make sure that it is the needles that are to blame. The fighter's pride should not be broken by the psycho. Jan, to Fan's applause, takes his stance with needles in his hands and says that this time he will cope. The unconscious Cyclops is again taken by orderlies. The nurse is asked to remove all the needles from him. After he came to his senses, Jean and Fan approached him again. Jean innocently asked how he was feeling. Cyclops just can't believe that the psycho is paralyzing him over and over again. John, seeing how depressed Cyclops is afraid that he has stopped trusting him. Fan, however, calms him down by saying that Cyclops will always trust him. Turning heavily onto his side, the one-eyed man looks at the two psychos and shouts to get them away from him. In the ward, John and Fan drink Sprite and Coke, thinking that they taste disgusting. After soy milk, Sprite and Cola do not seem real to them. Jan states that the hospital does not have Sprite or Coke and will have to go and buy them himself. Fan notes that they have no money. Friends look greedily at Cyclops lying on the bed nearby. Cyclops, amazed that he lost consciousness several times, lies thinking about the fate of the world. Approaching the bed on which the one-eyed man lies, John offers him to buy Jean's watch at a low price for just one attempt at acupuncture. An annoyed Cyclops simply tells the couple of psychos to get away from him. John begins to tell how he loves this watch and gives it to Cyclops only because he is a good person. Looking at John's hand, the amazed Cyclops sees that the clock is drawn on it with a marker. He says that he doesn't need John's watch. If he and Fan tell him how they killed the Hound, he will give them money. John and Fan, exchanging glances, decide to tell Cyclops about the Hound. Jan says that the dog was very cute, he had soft fur, and he wiggled his tail funny. Fan continues that the dog did everything he was told, even when he told the animal to fry itself. Losing his temper, the Cyclops cannot believe that the Hound allowed itself to be cuddled, then killed so that it could be eaten. John admires how the hound meat fell. Fan nods, saying that it was a wonderful dog. Behind the scenes, the spirit of the Hound is indignant at their shamelessness. The Cyclops shouts that they are mocking him, and he almost believed them. Sitting down on the bed, the one-eyed man is angry with himself, saying in vain that he decided to get information from such psychos. John and Fan cannot understand which psychos the one-eyed man is talking about. Fan suggests that perhaps he is talking about himself. Fan and John extend their hands to the Cyclops, exhausted by their antics and stories. They told him everything, so they want to get the money he promised them. Cyclops takes out a gold bank card from the pocket of his hospital shirt. He says that there are 10,000 yen on the card and gives the PIN code. Fan, having caught the card together with Jean, looks puzzled at the strange yellow object. John and Fan continue to look at the card when Cyclops continues to say that the card contains the remains of his savings. His parents died, he has no children, he himself can die fighting cursed creatures. The amount on the card does not matter much to him. Jan and Fan poke the card in the face of the one-eyed man, declaring that this is not money. The one-eyed man shouts at them to go to the bank and withdraw money from the card there. But for Jan and Fan, this thought turns out to be inaccessible. They just throw in a gold card with a ton of money back. Cyclops, lying on the bed, catches his card with 2 fingers. Jan decides that the one-eyed man was just pranking them and was not going to give them money. Fan adds that he is a terrible egoist. The Cyclops, who is almost bleeding from anger, decides that these two are real psychos. In the forest next to the hospital, on a tree, a cursed creature of the 2nd level was lurking. A cursed snake. He heard that 2 people who had absorbed the power of the cursed hound were in the hospital building. But in addition to the aura of the hound, he feels the presence of a very high-level fighter in the hospital with whom he cannot cope. It's too dangerous to go into the hospital, so he'll just wait for those 2 to come out. Sliding down the tree trunk, he unexpectedly hears some sounds. A human couple decides to retire to the forest. The lady asks for money in advance. The man reluctantly agrees. Listening to the size of the snake, he notes that if it weren't for the fighter in the hospital, he would have taken on his true form and absorbed both people. After some time, the man leaves the woman alone and leaves. The serpent remembers that he once heard about fallen women and decides that this is probably one of them. The temptation to eat the woman is too great, and he decides that her disappearance will not attract the attention of the fighter. Turning into a huge snake, he opens his mouth over a woman who is counting money. At the last moment, he feels the energy of the cursed hound. Transforming, he again turns into a small snake on a tree. After counting the money, the woman decides that her earnings today are not enough. A woman notices 2 handsome boys walking along the road. The snake understands that the energy of the cursed hound comes from them. Fan is looking for where they can buy Sprite, Coke, and also something to eat. Jean turns his head around. At this time, a woman coming out of the forest calls 2 guys to her. Fan and John approach the woman and ask if she knows where they can buy food and drinks. The woman sees that they are holding hands and decides that they are better off without the company of women. Fan asks his friend if he understands what she is talking about, but he himself does not know. Fan once again asks where he can buy food and drinks. John notes that they have no money. Then the woman notices that the pajamas the friends are wearing are not from Huatien Hospital. While friends are fooling around, a woman looks at the logo on their pajamas. The pajamas feature the logo of the Tianshan Psychiatric Clinic. She understands that these are patients of a psychiatric hospital and remembers something. A picture from her memory. She is running down the street calling her sister. Some guy throws her sister to the ground. Her sister is wearing pajamas similar to those of her new friends. The man tells her sister that she is crazy for considering the doll to be her son. With a crash, tearing the doll in half, he declares that he tore his sister's son. A poor woman in pajamas in a psychiatric clinic begs him not to touch her son, but it's too late. The doll is torn into 2 parts. With a trembling hand, the owner of the doll reaches out to what is left of her, addressing her as a son. Under the rumbles of the thunderstorm, the man bursts into laughter. The woman in the pink dress sees this whole scene and feels very sorry for her sister. Remembering her sister, the woman gives money to 2 patients at a psychiatric clinic. She says to give this money to fast food workers and they will feed them. Jean and Fan refuse her money, declaring that they can find food for themselves. The woman, smiling, insists that they take the money because it is easier to earn it than they think. The snake believes that now is the best time to take away the power of the cursed hound and rushes at Fan with lightning speed. He quickly grabs the damned creature who cannot understand what is happening. The woman is frightened by the snake while the snake itself is wondering how Fan managed to grab him because he is very fast. Fan shows the snake to Jean, stating that the snake is very cute and cute. Jean agrees with him. The snake is very embarrassed that someone thinks he is cute. He was once told that the longer the cursed beasts spend time in smaller versions, the more people want to protect them. While checking this, he somehow crept up to a boy playing football in the hope that he would like the little snake. When the snake crept up to the guy's leg, he heard a hiss. In fear, he runs away from the snake, which cannot understand what went wrong. Other children also run in panic from the place where they were playing football. The snake is offended that stupid people don't see how cute he is. The fact that people are afraid of him, even in a reduced form, makes him angry. But when Jean and Fan call him cute, he realizes that these 2 are not like the others. He wraps himself around Fan's hand as a sign of deep affection. Jean examines the snake with interest. The screen tells him that with its help, he can satisfy his hunger for 3 days and suggests a recipe for cooking. The snake looks dreamily at Fan. She thinks that Fan and Jean are different from the rest of the people, not suspecting that they want to eat her. While Jean is playing with the snake, Fan asks the woman to help him. A pot of delicious snake meat is being cooked on the stove in the girl's house. She adds herbs to the dish. Next to the pan, in a bloody jar, is the severed head of a snake. The process of preparing the snake cannot understand why it cannot move when Fan pins it to the cutting board. The snake cannot understand why they want to eat him if they think he is cute. The Fan raises a large kitchen knife over him. There is a crash as the large knife comes down on the unfortunate snake. Fan looks at the broken kitchen knife with interest. Fan throws the useless broken knife away. Another idea came to his mind. Fan holds the snake with his hands. The snake thinks that if the knife didn't take it, Fan will definitely not do anything with his bare hands. But then the head of the snake is separated from the body. The place around is filled with the blood of the snake. The housewife puts a whole pot of cooked soup on the table. Fan notes that it smells very tasty. The woman notes that she is good at cooking. Her daughter always likes what her mother cooks for her. Fan and Jean, inhaling the pleasant aroma of the dish, invite the hostess to join them and eat together. She refuses, saying that she has already eaten and wishes them bon appetit. Fan and Jean drink a bowl of soup in one gulp, saying that it is very tasty. The woman is very pleased that the guests like the food and silently thanks them for inviting her to eat with them. A girl who looks like the daughter of the owner of the apartment is walking home along a street with slums. Seeing Jean and Fan off, the woman gives them a thermos of soup on the way. Jean and Fan thank the woman for preparing them a delicious soup and even giving them a portion to take with them. The woman tells them that it is not that important and advises them to hurry back to the hospital. Jan once again praises the woman's soup. Fan says that her daughter is probably happy to have such a mother. This phrase thrown by Fan pierces the woman to the core. Wiping away tears, she says that her daughter is really happy. Leaving the woman, Fan and Jen walk towards a crowd of uniformly dressed people. Fan looks at them as the crowd passes by Fan and Zan. One of the fighters gets goosebumps. He realizes that he may have encountered a strong fighter. But when he turns around, Fan and Jean are already passing by. Looking at them, the fighter decides that he probably imagined it. Looking around the area, the fighters note that the creature's energy has disappeared somewhere. One of them suggests that it may have escaped. Hospital ward. Cyclops sitting on the bed cannot believe that the creature is dead. None of the fighters confirm the death of the beast. An ordinary person could not kill it. Fan with a thermos of snake soup opens the door and enters the room. Over the phone, Cyclops is informed that a signal from some creature has been detected near the hospital, which may be a second-level serpent. One-eyed looks at the thermos that Fan offers him. Fan opens the thermos and there is a divine smell. The shocked Cyclops realizes that this could be soup from the cursed creature. The squad on the other end of the phone cannot understand why the boss suddenly started swearing. With 2 fingers, Cyclops places the snake's bones in a special box that glows blue. The box shows that the bones belong to a cursed creature, a mythical snake of the 2nd level. Lying on the bed, the blackened Cyclops tries to comprehend what happened. Fan and Jean continue to eat soup next to each other. They decide to eat the soup themselves since the one-eyed man doesn't want it, even though it was offered to him. The Cyclops is trying to find out how they managed to kill and eat the snake. This is a cursed creature of the 2nd level with a deadly poison. Jean says that it was a cute snake that came close to them. Fan adds that it wrapped itself around his hand and allowed itself to be eaten. They remember how cute the snake was and how finger-licking delicious it was. Off-screen, the spirit of the snake is indignant at being eaten. The spirit of the dog calms him down. The Cyclops is angry. Veins appear on his forehead. His eyes glow red. He says that if he trusts Jean and Fan again, he will go out the window. Jean is surprised that Cyclops is so angry and hopes that he will soon feel better. Fan says that according to the head of the clinic, psychos are prone to aggression. The Cyclops, exhausted by the antics of Jean and Fan, falls into despair. Time passes, a bright day gives way to night, and lights come on in the windows of the hospital. The Cyclops, lying in a dark room, argues that his 2 neighbors in the room have impressive strength, since they could kill as many as 2 damned animals. He is trying to understand how they were able to do this and whether they always hid their incredible abilities. The rustling and stomping make Cyclops distracted from his reasoning. He realizes that his neighbors in the ward are busy with something. He sees the movement of their legs and decides that they are going somewhere, but cannot understand why they need to do this. Jean and Fan approach Cyclops' bed. Jean says that the one-eyed man is a good person and wants to use the advanced technique to heal him. One-Eye believes that since they showed great strength by killing several cursed creatures they can be trusted, he pretends to be asleep. Inserting needles into the Cyclops' body, Jean says that the room is quite dark and he doesn't see what he's doing. Fan replies that he believes Jean because he has studied acupuncture for many years and can cope even in the dark. Inspired by the words of his comrade, Jean gets down to business. He begins inserting needles into the head of an elite Special Forces soldier. Cyclops feels that the sensation he experiences during Jean's acupuncture procedures has become much stronger. He clutches the sheet on the bed in discomfort. Jean is about to stick the last 13th needle, saying that he has no right to make a mistake. At this moment, a nurse enters the room, asks what is happening in the room, and shines a bright flashlight. Jean realizes that he missed. The nurse, pointing her finger, asks what Jean and Fan are doing with the patient. Cyclops, covered in sweat, exhaling, tries to understand whether he is alive or not. He really doesn't want to do this, but with the last of his strength covered in needles, he calls for help. After this, he loses consciousness and his hand falls limply on the bed. Having dropped the flashlight, the nurse screams in horror that 2 psycho killers have encroached on another patient. The bleeding Cyclops is taken to the operating room on a gurney. His head is damaged in several places. John is upset that he stuck the last needle in the wrong place. Fan tells him not to worry because there is still hope. Jan and Fan are lying in the ward tied to a bed in the place of their neighbor's bed. Emptiness. Fan finishes his thought. There is hope as long as the patient is alive. One-Eye's head is shaved before the operation. The doctor says to be careful because the Cyclops' head is still bleeding. A one-eyed man with a shaved head lies on the bed. The doctor puts on gloves before starting the operation. The doctor says that the brain area has been checked and the operation can begin. He takes out a marker to mark the head of the one-eyed man. The Cyclops opens the eye that sees and looks at the doctor. The doctor is as embarrassed as possible. The patient woke up on his table. For some time, no one from the operating team can say a word. Sighing, the doctor says that it's good that the patient came to his senses before the operation, and not during it. The doctor standing next to him is surprised he already administered the anesthetic. Looking at the patient's testimony, the doctor states the facts. The patient came to his senses before the operation. Now his condition is stable. The operation needs to be postponed. The patient gets up. The doctor asks if the Cyclops wants to return to his room. The doctor continues, Even though everyone in his room is crazy, the one-eyed one is in better condition than the others. Perhaps he needs a separate room. One-Eye offendedly tells the doctor that he is the crazy one. Cyclops' face becomes so frightening that the doctor moves away, deciding that he needs to be careful with psychopaths. Examining the pictures, the doctor decides that there is something wrong with them. Judging by the pictures, the patient's spine has somehow recovered. Like a broken leg, here the doctor turns to the patient. But he is no longer on the operating bed. The doctor cannot understand where he went. The sunlight reflecting off Cyclops' bald head seems to illuminate the entire chamber as he enters it. Standing in front of the bed of the tied and peacefully dozing John, the one-eyed man says that he is the head of the special squad. But, his bald head shining, he continues, because of John, he has already lost consciousness 3 times. Cyclops says that John should be proud of this, thinking to himself that he will not forget what these two did to him. And even if he forgets, his hairstyle will gladly remind him of this. At this point, he is clearly nervous. The awake fan is impressed that Cyclops managed to survive. This requires considerable strength. They tell the one-eyed man, who has not completely recovered from the hairstyle situation, that next time John will definitely cure him. Having turned gray, the Cyclops turns to Fan, who is tied to the bed. But deciding that he is not bad, he goes to the window and climbs out of it, holding the frame with his hand. Before jumping, he says goodbye to Fan and John, and says that they will not see each other again. A nurse entering the room at the last moment sees a man throwing himself out of the window. She shouts that the patient whom they tried to kill, Fan and John, took his own life. The Cyclops jumps from a great distance and lands on his feet in the middle of the hospital yard. People are shocked that a man landed from such a height. One Eye calls on the phone and says that the guys may have great power, but their difficulties in communicating with people are unacceptable. On the other end of the line, she drops the phone in frustration. He clasps his head in his hands and begins to reproach the one-eyed man for doing this, giving hope and taking away in despair. He even calls Cyclops a Cyclops. The mood of the head of the psychiatric clinic is harmoniously emphasized by the weather outside the hospital, a thunderstorm and rain. The vice president of the hospital, standing in the rain while the nurse held an umbrella, was finally able to get through to Shy. The vice president says that one of She's patients committed suicide by going out the window. This news makes She very sad. She asks if everything is okay with the other patients. The vice president replies that the suicide is probably fine, he just ran away. Shy understands that we are talking about Cyclops and says that there is no need to worry. The vice president says that the very fact of jumping from the window does not particularly bother him. This is not the first time he has encountered Shy's patients and is ready for their antics. The reason for the call is that Cyclops ran away without paying for treatment. At this point, Shy's hand with the pipe falls on the table. He says that he doesn't know the person on the other end of the line and that he has the wrong number, and then hangs up. In anger, the vice president clutches the phone in his hand so tightly that cracks appear on it. An ambulance is driving at high speed in traffic. Inside, Fan and John discuss the fact that Cyclops survived. Jen wonders if Cyclops has a healthy eye. Fan says that he doesn't think so, but next time, John will definitely be able to cure Cyclops. John is very upset that he disappointed Cyclops and he didn't even say goodbye to them because of this. Fan recalls that before jumping out of the window, the one-eyed man said the word bye. He omits the part of the sentence where the one-eyed man says that they will not see each other again. John believes that the one-eyed man has something to do since he left without finishing the acupuncture sessions. He wonders, will Cyclops allow him to continue? Fan replies that, of course, because the one-eyed man trusts John. The apples on the ambulance window attract John's attention, and he says he wants to eat them. Fan says that he will give them to him, easily breaks the straps that bind him and reaches for the apples. Taking the apple with his freed hand, he gives it to John. John, while tied up, eats an apple directly from Fan's hands. You praise the apple you've eaten, and he tells Fan that it wouldn't hurt for him to eat too. Fan starts eating the apple, saying that it is really tasty and juicy. The ambulance driver calls the deputy a golden man for deciding to take the patients to a psychiatric clinic on his own. The deputy replies that this makes it much easier to make sure that his bills are paid. To quickly get to your destination, the deputy presses the gas pedal. The ambulance screeches and accelerates along the highway. The first harbor of the city of Yenhei is visible to a ship with containers nearby. There are cranes. A huge octopus tentacle throws away a bald Special Forces soldier. 4 fighters run away from the monster together, running into the space between the containers. They are confronted by a cursed creature of the 4th level, a huge octopus. Having taken an advantageous position, the team attacks. The swordsman uses the sword of the 1st level. The man with glasses casts a fire whirlwind spell, throwing out a card. 2 flashes of blue and yellow hit the massive body of the octopus. The team freezes in anticipation. Like ordinary octopuses, the cursed creature releases a certain black substance from itself. The hunters understand that this substance is a destructive fog and the highest hunting ability, which means that in front of them is a creature of not the 4th, but the 5th level. They retreat because the fog is dangerous. One touch to it is tantamount to death, and they decide to request reinforcements. However, the fog follows on their heels. The fighters cannot run far from it, and one of them runs slower than the others. The fog becomes thicker every second. The guy with blue hair understands that he is about to die. The guy's golden claw protection is activated, and now the golden wall protects him from the octopus and the fog. The silhouette standing above on the scaffolding says that he is not in the best mood. His hand glows yellow from the protection he has activated. Below, between the tentacles of the octopus, there are protective balls with hunters. If it were not for the activated protection, the poisonous fog would probably have overtaken them all. The Cyclops says that they should not dare to die so quickly. He hopes to calm the creature. His team is interested in a very important question in such a situation: why the boss changed his hairstyle. One Eye uses the dragon breathing technique. His eyes glow with a reddish glow, and an energy flame forms around his hand. Having aimed an attack at the target, he attacks the monster. An energy beam hits the monster. A bunch of cars on the bridge stand practically motionless. Among them stands an ambulance taking Fan and Zhenya to a psychiatric clinic. The doctor asks why the traffic jam is formed. The orderly tells him that something probably happened ahead. People run past the ambulance in a panic. Running past, they shout that they need to get away from here as quickly as possible. There is a damned creature on the bridge. The doctor turns to the pale orderly and tells him that he hears people screaming. At this time, a man crashes into the car, apparently thrown away by the monster. The vice president swears Dinon, realizing that they are in a not very good situation. Standing over the body of a defeated octopus, Cyclops realizes that something wrong is going on. Shaking off the tentacle, he says that he still feels the energy of the damned creature. His team is in shock. The battle with the giant octopus took a lot of their strength, and they have no desire to repeat it. One of his subordinates runs to him to tell him the unpleasant news. One damned creature has escaped and is heading towards the city center. The subordinate shows the boss a tablet with the location of the monster. The outline map of the city shows that the monster is now on the bridge. Loud sounds of blows are heard on the bridge. People, screaming, run away from the monster. Meanwhile, in the ambulance, Fan reports that he didn't eat enough apples. Jean replies that they have no more apples. They ate everything. Fan says that he is still hungry. The girl in his head said that the last stage, the breaking stage, requires significant reinforcement. The orderly asks the deputy for help while he is busy with the victim. The huge pink octopus that made so much noise on the bridge is looking for its father. The deputy, bending over the wounded man, asks to bring him a first aid kit from the car. He hurries the orderly. They don't have much time. He says that they need to run. The monster is approaching and will soon be here. The doctor takes off his watch, the latest model Apple Watch, and throws it to the orderly. The orderly catches them. The deputy tells him to give him a first aid kit to take the watch and run, and to take care of the watch like the apple of his eye. Clutching his watch in his hands, the orderly comes to his senses for a while. Finally, he tells the doctor that the patient's body is too badly damaged. He can no longer be helped, and the doctor will die if he does not escape. Continuing to treat the patients, the doctor begins to tell the orderly the history of the watch. This watch was given to him by the child he saved after the deputy's first operation. Since then, the deputy has sworn never to abandon his patients. The orderly is shocked by the deputy's touching story, but is forced to ask one more question. There are 2 patients in the ambulance. Shouldn't we save them? The blushing deputy tells the shocked orderly that these 2 don't count. The orderly wants to untie John and Fan. He enters the ambulance and says that the monster is approaching and they need to escape. John and Fan look at each other as they process the new information. Fan, with a slight wave of his hand, breaks the straps that bind John. The orderly says that they are doing a good job with the release without him. The orderly tries to drag Jean-Fan away from the bridge, but they have a very important question. To the surprise of the orderly, they ask, "Is the creature from which he was about to run away cute?" He, puzzled by such a question after thinking, answers, yes. He recalls how the monster lifted cars with passengers and caused colossal destruction. Despite all this, it looked quite cute. Fan tells the orderly that if this is the case, then there is no need to run. John says that it would be better for them to play with the monster. The orderly says that they are probably completely crazy without telling the guys anything new. The cursed octopus of level 8 is looking for his father. In his anger, he scatters a bunch of cars. Jean appears in a red aura and says that today he is instead of the octopus's father. The deputy turns to the driver. He is out of bandages and needs 2 more packs. Not finding the driver, the deputy is outraged that he ran away so quickly. The patient comes to his senses and thanks the doctor for the help he provides. A giant octopus climbs onto an ambulance. The patient notices a cursed creature and wants to warn the doctor. He tells the deputy to just run away and leave him. But he says that he is a doctor and cannot do this to a patient. A huge octopus from above pays attention to these 2. He touches the doctor, asking if people have seen his dad. At this time, the doctor, trying to stop the patient's bleeding, thinks that he will die here. Angry that they are not answering him, the octopus is going to attack people. Finally, knowing that they will most likely die, the wounded man thanks the doctor while the octopus tentacle flies towards them. Suddenly, the octopus realizes that something strange is happening to him. Someone drags an octopus past the car as it crashed across the bridge. The deputy, who is awaiting death, cannot understand for a few more moments that the danger has passed. Suddenly, the deputy hears someone calling him and turns around to see who is there. It turns out that this is an orderly. He found a car and wants to load the patient into it to take him to the hospital. The deputy is very happy to see the ambulance driver. He thought that he had run away. The deputy is a little ashamed of this thought. The driver and the deputy take the patient by the arms and say that they will talk later. Now it is important to take the patient to the hospital. When the doctor reminds him that he is talking to the director, the driver reminds him that the doctor is actually the deputy director. The octopus dragged from the bridge cannot understand where it ended up. It is still disoriented. Jan tells Lil Fan that he also wants to play with the octopus. Fan says that in that case he needs to jump down to them. Continuing to hold the huge creature, Fan says that he caught it and Jan can jump straight onto the octopus. Jan agrees with Fan. He really likes this idea. He jumps from the bridge shouting Fan's name and flies for a while. Landing on the octopus's head, it apparently causes it severe discomfort. Janya has a lot of fun on the octopus's head, with all his childish spontaneity. He pokes his finger at the octopus. The octopus waves its tentacles, wanting to throw Jan off its head. Suddenly there is a sound of impact. Something happened to the octopus. The Jan is rolling down. Fan steps on the octopus's tentacle and says that he was a very bad boy. Fan says that the creature is somewhat aggressive, so he will hold it. And he adds that one part of the octopus fell off. John says that it's probably not scary for an octopus because it still has a lot of tentacles. But the octopus is in great pain. He rushes about in agony and calls his father for help. Without paying any attention to this, Fan says that John is right. For an octopus, the loss of a limb is really not terrible. For the pain they caused him, the octopus wants to kill Jean and Fan. It swings one of its intact tentacles at Fan. Fan, out of habit, catches the giant creature's tentacle in flight. Squeezing the tentacle with one hand, he sharply pulls it towards himself. The crash mixes with the scream of the unfortunate creature when it loses another tentacle. Joyful Jean finds a barbecue somewhere under the bridge and says that he saw such things on TV. Next to him lies a whole bunch of broken octopus tentacles. It looks like Fan didn't waste any time. The poor creature swears at Fan when he breaks off more tentacles from him. He rams his remaining tentacles on Fan's head. In response, he simply bites one of the giant tentacles of the cursed creature. John starts to eat the tentacle of the unfortunate creature, but suddenly smells a pleasant smell. The octopus also pays attention to the smell. Together with Fan, they froze in search of the place where it comes from. An octopus tentacle drizzled with golden oil is grilled. Chen rubs the tentacle with oil with a special brush, believing that the more oil, the better the taste. Everyone, including the big octopus, is drooling over the delicious-smelling meat. The octopus comes to mind with a terrible guess about the nature of the dish that gives off such a smell. Looking around, he realizes with horror that John is preparing his tentacles. Confirming his guess, John directly speaks about this by offering tentacles to Fan. Jan and Fan quickly eat all the octopus tentacles while standing over the barbecue. John says that this is the last tentacle. The poor octopus cries and once again calls his father for help. He has no more tentacles left, only his head. After thinking, John decides to eat the octopus's head. Fan supports him in this. On the grill, the still-alive octopus tells his father that he will never even see its head again. Standing on the bus, the Cyclops wonders where the monster went. His assistant managed to detect a wave of energy from the monster. Quickly jumping off the bus, the Cyclops looks at the tablet which shows the location of the creature. The map clearly indicates that the creature is under the bridge not far from the task force's location. Arriving at the place, the Cyclops realizes that the energy comes from two of his old acquaintances who lay down to sleep after a hearty lunch. The assistant wonders where the hound went when Cyclops turns his attention to the barbecue. A girl from Cyclops' team approaches and offers to wake up and question the two sleeping people about the cursed creature. But the one-eyed one is against it. He asks the girl who is afraid of him, can they believe crazy people, and receives a negative answer. He is indignant at how she can offer to trust crazy people, the girl thinks, if he is talking to himself. The Cyclops tells the girl never to trust crazy people, otherwise he will shave her bald. The girl does not understand how this is connected. Despite the oddities, she likes her boss because he was able to figure out simply by their clothes that these people were crazy. While the girl looks at Cyclops with adoring eyes, the assistant asks what to do if they find the creature. Realizing what really happened, the one-eyed man silently turns to the lying guys. Under the puzzled looks of his team, he heads towards John and Fan. Standing over them, he asks only one question. Was the octopus tasty? In their sleep, the comrades remember the tasty tentacles of the unfortunate creature and answer the question in the affirmative. The Cyclops finally confirms his guess. The creature has been found, the task has been completed, but he does not feel any relief. At the headquarters, there is another meeting about what to do with the wiser damned creatures. A woman at a special screen talks about the new abilities of cursed creatures. Many fighters notice that the animals know how to suppress their power. Cyclops is unable to concentrate on the report. He thinks about the patients who were able to overcome so many damned creatures. Is it worth training them? He is still tormented by painful memories of the acupuncture session that John performed with him. Just thinking about this episode of his life, Cyclops begins to tremble. While the woman is finishing her report, Cyclops thinks that it is better not to think about the unusually strong patients of the psychiatric clinic. Everyone pays attention to the fact that the one-eyed man does not pay attention to the report, but is immersed in his thoughts. The speaker, the leader of the strategic division, draws attention to Cyclops and doesn't really like that he turns a deaf ear to her report. Crossing her arms, she addresses the one-eyed man directly and asks if he doubts her plan. Cyclops begins to panic. He has no idea what plan we are talking about. Realizing that the one-eyed man did not follow her words, she repeats it again personally for him. Each of the 4 disciplines trainers will be sent to Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital to boost their morale for 1 month. Touching his bald head with an elegant hand, she asks if those present have any questions. However, it is clear to everyone that he is primarily interested in Cyclops' opinion, so the trainers refrain from asking questions. Looking at the Cyclops, the leader of the strategic division hints that she is primarily interested in the Cyclops' opinion. He is a highly qualified tactical specialist. Cyclops unexpectedly says that the task may be too difficult for beginners. All 4 coaches are unanimously surprised by the strange words of the head of the special group. The woman, continuing to hold her hand on the one-eyed man's bald head, says that perhaps he meant that the task would be too easy. She thinks that Cyclops, as an operative, is eager to fight and explains to him that training fighters in a mental hospital will help them adapt to the unexpected. Their enemies are in some ways similar to mentally ill people, so before entering the war, they need training in a psychiatric hospital. Therefore, the Cyclops cannot avoid this either, no matter how much he wants the opposite. The one-eyed man understands to himself that psychos are simply very scary for him. But the top-class tactician convinces all 4 coaches. The woman continues to see cursed creatures appear less and less in recent days. Onzi, she believes that this is how they are trying to distract the attention of the hunters. She also reports that a hierarchy appears among the cursed creatures. Those with high intelligence lead those who are stupider. All those present listen attentively. They perceive this information with caution. The speaker reports that this has never happened before. It poses a huge danger since no one knows what level their leaders are. Having finished the report, she notes that they need more information. Another bright, clear day. The park of the psychiatric hospital. 3 days have passed since the report. The antennae of the ant and the female ant are connected, showing great love between them. The ant is very happy that he has finally returned home after a long journey. A hand appears from behind the bushes, which the ants take to be divine. Tears appear in the eyes of the ants. It would seem how possible this is, when a hand grabs a male ant and drags it somewhere. The hand drops the ant in another place near his home. The ant almost immediately returns to his beloved. Jan, to whom the hand belonged, thoughtfully watches this from behind the tall grass. But the hand again kidnaps the unfortunate ant from his family. Jan thoughtfully examines the ant. The ant believes that he is evil in the flesh. Fan is looking for Jean. His friend responds to his call and crawls out of the grass. Jumping to his feet, John is glad that his friend has finally woken up. John talks about the wonderful ant he discovered. It returns to the house no matter how far you drag it. Fan thinks it's funny. Fan slept for 3 days. Jean tells him that after eating the octopus, they were immediately taken to the clinic. John notes that while Fan was sleeping, he looked very much like a pig. Fan wonders if he really looks like a pig. Fan says that it was not just a dream. He was put into sleep mode by a woman. In order to break through his ceiling, the woman said that he had reached Thai level. The ant is glad that the man has left him behind, chatting enthusiastically with his friend. Happy and flushed as can be, he tells his beloved that they can return home. Fan touches the wood with one finger. His touch causes a crack to appear in the wood. A strong explosion occurs and the tree splits into two parts. A beam of energy flies over the grass, cutting off blades of grass that are unfortunate enough to grow too high. John is very glad that Fan has become stronger because before, in order to knock down a tree, he at least needed to hit the tree with his fist. The poor ant watches doomedly as a huge tree falls on him. He never manages to fully understand what is happening. The tree falls to the ground with a loud sound, killing the unfortunate ant. John is sure that Fan was made stronger by his galactic circulation technique. Fan did not try to dissuade him out of the kindness of his heart that is characteristic of him. The screen expresses dissatisfaction with the fact that his work is being attributed to himself. The ant's beloved cries over his dead body because only recently it seemed that everything would be fine. Unexpectedly for the reader, another ant comes up and calms the unfortunate widow. Number one has died, but her other husbands are still alive. They crawl out to her from all the cracks and begin to console her. Wiping her eyes with a small handkerchief. Where do ants get handkerchiefs? She thanks all her husbands. People crowded around the tree. They cannot understand what kind of slayach toppled this tree. Someone is happy that there were no casualties. The electric tower is under high voltage. In real life, you really shouldn't climb out of it. John asks Fan if he really wants to do what he has planned. Jean heard on TV that it is quite dangerous, in which case he will not be able to help. Fan refers to the psychotic woman in his head. Jean says that the head of the clinic does not recommend believing psychotics. Fan says that he may not trust the voice in his head, but he trusts his friend John. Jan says that he also trusts Fan. The friends decide that if they trust each other, nothing will stop them. The friend is not sure that he can get Fan to the dangerous electrical thing, but Fan notes that he can get there himself. The Fan quickly jumps onto the transformer. I think that's what this thing is called. Jan is amazed that Fan can jump so high. With a loud sound, a metal capsule falls to the ground. The doctor treating Fan for bulimia dropped the object when he saw what was happening here. Having come to his senses a little, he calls the head of the clinic for help. At the top, Fan says that he managed to have discharges pass through his body, this time probably much more powerful. Fan's hair stands on end. There may be some cultural reference here. Fan's hair is completely tousled, but he feels an incredible surge of strength. The doctor contacts Mr. Shi by phone. He says that they have problems, again, patients from the same ward. The head of the clinic says that the ambulance is on the way, but the doctor believes that it is time to book a place in the cemetery. Fan's burnt face illuminates with a bright, blinding light. The transformer explodes. The explosion is very powerful. Sparks and flames are everywhere. Fan rushes to the ground like lightning, thrown back by the blast wave. Having fallen to the ground, it still sparks. The grass around it burns. The orderlies surround Fan. They are sure that he is dead and cannot be touched to avoid getting an electric shock. Fan's body continues to hiss and burn the grass around him. John quickly makes his way past the orderlies who have cordoned off the place. Amid the screams of the orderlies, he runs to Fan, whose body is still riddled with electric shocks. Raising his hand, Fan forbids his friend to come closer. All black, he declares that he is still alive, just a little tired. Fan said that he really wants to sleep. His hand falls to the ground. Chan touches Fan's electrified hand, and a ringing sound is heard. The current discharge throws Fan away, so after spinning in flight, he hits the ground. The doctor who dialed Shi tells him that he needs to look at what is happening personally, also wondering whether it is worth waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Seeing the injuries received by Fan, the doctor who is about to perform the operation on him sobs. The doctor says that he is not omnipotent and is unlikely to be able to save such a burned patient. The nurse wipes the doctor's sweat while he says that even if the sensors show that the patient is alive, 90% of the body is already burned. He cannot be saved. Coming out of the operating room, the woman tells the deputy director that Dr. Lee refused to operate on the patient. The deputy says that you need to fight for the patient until he takes his last breath. If the doctor refuses, he will do the operation himself. The nurse is amazed at the deputy director's dedication. He is adjusting his robe and getting ready for a complex operation. There is a sign above the doors of the surgery. The operation lasts 10 hours. Finally, the light turns green. The lengthy operation is over. The tired deputy finishes the operation and tells him to bandage the patient and transport him back to the room. The nurse receives the command and reports that the head of the psychiatric clinic has come to the hospital and wants to meet. The chief waits for a long time for the deputy outside the operating room. The deputy is furious at how he dared to show up after he again dumped the patients on him. He even allowed Jean and Fan to get injured by electricity again. The deputy throws the OR door wide open and starts yelling at Shay. He tells Shi that he will never forgive him for sending his special patients to the hospital over and over again. Shi, smiling, says that they can discuss this later, but now he wanted to ask about the client card at the hospital. The deputy is struck on the spot by Shi's words. He is angry beyond belief. Looking around, he sees a shield with a massive fire extinguisher. Snatching a fire extinguisher from his shield, he rushes at Shi with it. 2 doctors watch in horror from the operating room. They try to keep the deputy from hurting Shi, saying that murder is against the law. Shi understands that with his last remark, he has probably exhausted the deputy's patience. The orderlies can barely restrain the deputy while he raises a fire extinguisher over his head and wants to kill the head of the clinic. They say that after that, the deputy needs sleep. She continues to stand nearby, watching the deputy's breakdown. Lee finally lowers the fire extinguisher, sending the head of the clinic to hell. He falls asleep in the arms of the orderlies. The head of the clinic innocently asks, "What's wrong with the fact that he wanted to save some money?" The next morning, Jean sleeps by Van's bed, sitting on her knees. Jen remained completely fine. He simply passed out from the electric shock. The blue screen informs Fan that the body training was successful and a new level of chi practice has been opened. Fan slaps his peacefully sleeping neighbor on the head, trying to wake up his friend. John, waking up, rubs her eyes, moving away from sleep. Finally coming to his senses, he is glad that his friend has woken up. Having thrown off his burnt skin, Fan again begins to look like a Greek statue. A metal tray falls to the floor with a loud thud. Its contents scatter on the ground. The nurse cannot understand how the patient can be in such good condition. After all, just yesterday he was all burnt. They saved him from death. A lot of people come into the room. The doctor examines Fan with interest. The nurse says that just yesterday his skin was all burnt. Now the former emergency patient looks perfect. His smooth skin sparkles. All visitors unanimously admire Fan's beauty. Their close attention confuses the guy and he turns away. They tell Cyclops over the phone about the incident with Fan and Zahn. He decides that they are looking for death since they climbed onto the electrical tower. He thought about training them, but now he believes that the issue was resolved by itself. One Eye says that even though they are crazy, he is worried about them since they were in the same room. He wants to visit their graves. The device tells Cyclops that the money lover is calling him. He informs the stunned Cyclops that the patient survived. He wonders how this is possible, since even third-level fighters cannot survive this. One Eye thinks that John and Fan might be level 4 or so. The 4th-level talent deserves improvement, Cyclops continues to think. Shi says that he can check again, but John from Phantom definitely lives differently and cannot be. The head of the clinic with a thermos leaves the territory of someone else's hospital. The orderlies run after him, asking why he is leaving because he wanted to discuss the registration of a membership card with the deputy. She notes that it doesn't matter anymore as the head of the clinic leaves. The deputy chases him throughout the hospital. The orderlies are shocked by Shi's words and ask if he is serious. The head of the clinic tells the orderlies that the deputy, exhausted from the operation, needs to sleep. It is better to leave him alone for now. Shi himself would not refuse sleep either. In one of the wards, Liang's beloved feeds him from a spoon, worrying that her beloved does not get burned. The happy and well-fed Li's gaze falls on the girl's bag in which a crack is visible. She tells him not to worry. Even though the bag is torn, it doesn't matter since she can still use it. Li sharply replies that it does not matter how he can allow his beloved to use a torn bag. Groaning and turning on his side, he begins to look for something. He finds and hands his beloved a card. It contains a certain amount of money. He can go and buy himself a handbag. The girl gratefully takes a card about her lover, saying that he is very cool. Stuffing the card into her dress pocket, she says that Uncle Wang decided to visit him in the hospital. Li says that this is very good. After all, he has long wanted to thank his uncle for introducing them. The girl, embarrassed, says that she is not so good. Li chuckles kindly at his lover's shyness. Someone uses facet vision to look around a hospital waiting room. Uncle Wang, going to visit his nephew, does not realize that this was possibly a hallucination. It started with the fact that he ate a lot of fish. On a piece of fish sits a cursed fly, a parasitic creature of the 3rd level. The uncle's hand reaches out to the piece. He had no idea that there was a parasite on the piece of fish. Van greedily swallows a piece of fish on which a black speck of a fly has grown inside can be seen. The infected person begins to cast a shadow in the form of a huge fly. However, he does not suspect this. Standing over the plates of food, he is pleased that he ate deliciously. The nurse sees a dark, trembling silhouette of a creature in the corridor. For some time, she cannot see what is in front of her. When she finally realizes that it is the nurse's eyes, the pupils of her eyes widen in horror. The corridor is filled with her screaming, "Monster!" and a flyman stands in front of her. The flyman is dissatisfied with the loud scream of the girl in punishment. He wants to suck all her blood. The monster brutally hits the nurse in the face with its sharp paw, and he throws the bloodied nurse into one of the rooms. By chance, this turns out to be the room in which John and Fan are located. They are surprised by what happened. The poor woman wheezes and screams for help when the monster grabs her by the throat with its terrible paw. She continues to call for help while the monster says that he simply must cut her throat. After all, this is the only way to get her to stop yelling. The world blurs in the nurse's eyes as the monster strangles her. Tears flow from her eyes and she panics as the monster's huge hand continues to strangle her. A sharp needle is pierced through the suit into the monster's free hand. Looking at the monster, Jean tells him that he is mortally ill. Something is compressing inside him and is about to explode. John says that he knows the technique of acupuncture, and despite the man's appearance as a fly, he will save him. The monster shouts out to Jean that he is probably looking for death if he dares to treat him like that. The flyman frees his hand to strike, throwing the unfortunate nurse aside. A dull thud is heard as she crashes into the wall. The damned creature is about to hit Jean, but something distracts him. Having moved to the scene of the event, Fan tightly squeezes the monster's hand. He says that no one dares to offend Mr. Jean. John asks his friend to ask the monster if he agrees to treatment. Fan agrees to act as a negotiator for medical services for the flyman. The negotiator asks the monster if he wants to use acupuncture. The monster shouts that he will rip his throat out. Fan breaks the cursed creature's arm with a loud crunch. Holding the remains of the monster's hand in his hands, he asks, "Does he want to be healed?" The monster begins to worry but still believes that he can kill Fan. With a buzz, he rushes at the offender, but catching him is not so easy. During one of the monster's attacks, Fan looks at him with an unkind look and a red glow appears in his eyes. Having caught the moment, he grabs the flyman by the transparent flywing. The monster wonders how a human can be fast enough to catch him. Fan's eyes continue to glow with the same bloody light. With a loud slurp, he tears off one of the flyman's wings and he screams in pain and asks him to stop. Blood continues to drip from the torn flywing in Fan's hands. The creature sits breathing heavily under the wall of the chamber with a torn-off wing. Fan asks if the severely injured creature would like to receive medical attention. Fan grabs the monster by the suit with one hand and pulls him towards him. Pulling the flyman towards him, he says that it's worth allowing yourself to get acupuncture. Holding the monster tightly by the neck and tilting it towards his friend, Fan says that the flyman wants to try acupuncture. Jan sighs and asks why Fan is holding the creature like that. He says that this is exactly how the monster held the poor woman, and he wants to see if the monster now likes this position. Smiling and showing an OK sign with his fingers, Jean says that Fan's idea is good. The acupuncture master says that the creature has advanced its illness too much, so he should hurry and inserts a needle into the monster's head. A nurse, with a bloody face, hands folded in a prayer gesture, watches as the creature writhes from Jean's treatment. The whole head of the flyman is already covered with needles. Jean uses the technique of intergalactic transfer. Concentrating, Jean is about to insert the last needle. The whole nature of a flyman tells him that a huge danger comes from Jean. At the last moment, when the needle is already brought to the monster's face, he says to wait. He is a parasitic fly that lives in the body of people. If Fan kills him, he will kill the host. Fan is puzzled. The fly is thinking through his plan. He is waiting for pseudo-morality to prevent John from killing him right away. When he finally decides, the flyman uses the larvae that he deposited in every person he touched. As long as there is food, the monster can restore its knowledge and strength and even become a parasitic fly again. The monster is happy that he thinks that John is suffering from a moral dilemma, trying to find a way to save a man and kill a fly at the same time. The 13th needle pierces the head of the flyman, who clearly did not expect such a turn. The swaying man, the fly, doesn't understand why John didn't even hesitate. Doesn't he care about human morality? Falling to the floor, the fly cannot understand why John thinks differently from other people. After the man-fly fell struck to the floor, the fly's essence begins to separate from the human one. In the room with her beloved Lou, strange things begin to happen. Her eyes begin to glow red. She pronounces the word daddy. The girl's body begins to transform into that of a fly. A former orderly at a psychiatric clinic is horrified to understand what happened to his beloved. The girl's transformation is over. The flywoman sadly says that Dad has died. The orderly prudently hides from the creature behind the bed. A green card given to Lee falls out of the woman's pocket. While she doesn't see the orderly crawling under the bed, he takes the card, and the fly flies out of the room like lightning before the woman comes to her senses. Closing the door and leaning his body on it, the orderly thinks that he almost died. The woman begins to break through the wooden doors with powerful blows. A nurse passing by asks what they are doing here. It's probably some kind of love affair. In despair, Lee shouts that he will accept his beloved if she gains weight, even forgive her for her betrayal and raise someone else's child. But he shouts that he will never come to terms with the fact that she is so ugly. The monster's hand breaks through the door directly above the stunned Lee's head. Leaning out of the hole punched in the door, the creature looks intently at Lee. Suddenly, a human hand grabs the orderly by the collar of his hospital pajamas. The deputy director of the hospital silently moves Lee away from the door of the room. Standing in a fighting stance, the deputy holds a large sword in his hands. Lee looks at the deputy with adoration. He thinks that he took out the sword to protect Lee. A woman fly who came out of the room looks at this whole scene. In response to the orderly's words, Lee recalls how he got into this situation. Lee was curled up and snoring peacefully in his office after a difficult 10-hour operation. Suddenly he remembers something and jumps up sharply. It seems the memory gives him strength. Sitting on the bed, Lee remembers that Sure asked to make him a hospital membership card. His gaze falls on a large sword standing as a decoration against the wall of the office. A moment later, the deputy grips the hilt of the large sword tightly. Holding a large sword in his hands, all shrouded in rage, he goes to apply for She's membership card. Present time, the woman fly, cracking her neck, heads towards the deputy and Lee. The deputy tells the ambulance driver Juan that the hospital has been attacked by a cursed creature and a special squad needs to be called. He shouts in response with the phone in his hands that he has already called the squad and they are already on their way. The angry fly woman tells Lee to go to hell and heads towards him. He replies that she lied to him and in fact, she is not a good girl at all. The deputy knocks Lee down and pins him to the floor, moving him away from the monster's blow. Lee looks with admiration at the deputy who saved him the second time. Someone takes out the witch cards and holds 3 cards with 2 fingers. Using the technique, he throws 3 cards at the cursed creature. Burning vines begin to grow from the cards stuck to the body of the fly woman. Soon she is all entangled in green vines and cannot move. The arriving special squad enters into battle with the cursed creature. The bald man standing in front of his comrades uses the golden armor technique. A woman from the special squad stops to help the victims and tells Li Huang and the deputy to leave. The cursed creature bursts into flames and makes loud noises. The swordsman begins to use the mind stance technique. His sword hangs in the air next to his hand, shrouded in tongues of blue flame. The sword, guided by the technique, flies towards the monster in blue light. It plunges into the fly and pierces it. It seems that it will not survive. The operatives run up and tell them to leave the rest to them. The Cyclops assistant in a blue uniform says that the fly's energy has disappeared, which means it is dead. He adds that on the way here they discovered a fly that could be the woman's parent and send a special squad to her, at which time the body twitches. His tablet food reports that a strong surge of energy has been recorded. The surge of energy is so strong that the tablet estimates that the team cannot cope with it and requests support. Another creature crawls out of the body of the fly killed by the fighters. The hospital staff runs away in fear, shouting that many have already died. A huge spawn with 3 heads seeking retribution approaches them, breaking everything in its path. Among the crowd of running people are special patients, John and Fan. John doesn't understand why they are running away and why they didn't help the wounded. At this time, Fan tells him to look at the fly. The huge cursed creature of the 7th level says that they managed to kill it in its old body, but now it has been reborn. John doesn't understand why Fan wants him to look at the fly. He looks at it intently and asks if it doesn't look cute. 7 minutes before the level 7 fly appears in the chamber, Jean examines the half-divided body of the flyman. Crying, he does not understand why the patient died after his treatment. Fan consoles him by saying that next time he should just try harder. Behind the scenes, the soul of Uncle Van, who joined the creatures killed by the strange couple, is indignant. John says that he died because of his treatment, and since the head of the clinic said that killing people is illegal, he will probably be imprisoned. Off-screen, Uncle Van's soul says that he wants to see them receive their well-deserved punishment. Van's fist breaks through the glass window of the hospital room. With the sound of broken glass, Fan tells the upset John that they should just run. All the creatures he killed behind the scenes are shocked by this decision of the heroes. John says that running away is a lot of fun, so he agrees to run away with Fan. While Fan is helping John climb onto the windowsill, a fly-bitten nurse accosts them. She doubts whether she should tell them this because they are crazy, but still thanks John and Fan for saving her. Fan and John, standing on the windowsill, are terribly pleased with the words of the nurse. Fan jumps into the hospital courtyard from the ward window, landing on his feet. Having looked around, he tells John to jump. He checked that it was not fatal. At this time, the screams of people running away from the cursed creature are heard. The Energy Wave Detection Center recorded a surge in the creation energy of the 7th level on the territory of the hospital. The 4th level team is in place, but this is not enough. Additional reinforcements are needed. The Cyclops is determined to come to the aid of the fighters and is already heading towards the exit. But the woman stops him. She says that he can't go in this mess. The ringmaster should appear. Lai continues to tell the Cyclops that as a national hero, he must remain to defend the center. She points out the fighters who are better suited for this mission. A squad of special-level fighters from Tian King's team has just returned from a mission. The woman declares that they can defeat a creature of the 8th level. John asks if the fly seems cute to Fan, if he is hungry again. The fly is terribly angry at the words of this couple. The monster is going to kill them. The blue screen reports that the energy of the cursed creature will be enough to satisfy his hunger for 7 weeks. The fly reaches out with its huge paw towards John and Fan while he is busy with the screen in his head. The screen tells Fan the method of preparing the fly and also says that its meat contains 60 times more protein than beef. Fan continues to think about cooking the fly while the man lying in the bushes tells them to run. Fan extends his finger towards the paw of a huge fly flying towards him. Kogafan lightly touches the man's paw. Something epic happens. There is an explosion. One of the monster's heads is completely blown away by a shining beam. A bald soldier from a Special Forces unit wonders if this is a hallucination. The giant creature rushes about in agony and screams. Blood flows from the place of the severed head. John tells Fan that during the days while he was unconscious, Fan's strength increased greatly. A voice in Fan's head says that the full power of the energy cultivation technique is approximately equivalent to the punch power of a 9th level fighter. Fan wants to kill the monster with it, but John is puzzled by how Fan can reach the creature. Fan demonstrates how he wants to get to the monster. Pushing off the ground, he jumps. The fan flies high up at the place from which he started. Clouds of dust rise. The monster points one of its heads towards Fan. A wound from the blow is visible on his chest. The cursed creature hits Fan with its head and he flies to the ground. The abomination raises a huge clawed hand over Fan to strike him. While flying a long distance, Fan lands on his feet. With a cry, "Die!" the fly hits the place where the fan is standing with its paw. The fly's claws hit Fan's body, unable to pierce it. The screen reports the activation of the protective ability, the golden body. Fan's hand grabs the damned creature's deadly claw. With one hand, he pushes the giant fly's heavy hand away from him, and he delivers a strong blow to the paw, from which it literally splits. Sitting on the floor, Jean cannot understand why Fan thinks the fly is cute. It is very disgusting. While the monster's hand is torn into pieces under Fan's mighty blow, he is worried that he and Fan have very different tastes, which means they cannot avoid quarrels. Fan jumps onto the fly and strikes it again. The fly screams in pain. John thinks that his comrade must be very hungry if he decided to eat such a not cute little fly. But he himself will not eat it because it is very disgusting. He cannot overcome himself. Fan runs towards Zhenya. He pulls the body of the giant fly behind him with one hand. Fan only wants to invite Zhenya to begin the process of eating the cursed creature. But he shyly says that he doesn't think the fly is cute, which means he and his friend have different tastes. Fan, with a calm expression on his face, throws the fly carcass into the air. He calms down the upset John by telling him that he too considers the fly not cute, but disgusting. John is very happy that he and Fan have similar views on the nature of cuteness. The voice in Fan's head is indignant, because the fly's energy could last him for a long time. Fan repeats that he doesn't think the fly is cute. The screen says that even though normal people don't eat flies, he and John are crazy and could try it. A collapsed hospital, 2 soldiers keep the debris from falling with the help of protective equipment. Meanwhile, the female medic from the group is treating the victims with her techniques. She says that the boss and reinforcements are already close. We just need to hold out until he arrives. Meanwhile, the tablet in the hand of the operative crushed by the stones reports that Tahina Larval, the founder of the clan, has been eliminated. Jen recalls that before Fan thought that the fly could be eaten, they wanted to run away. Fan doesn't mind, but he is very hungry and tired. The screen advises him to think about eating a big fly. An exhausted Fan falls to the ground in front of a surprised John. The screen reports that the master has never spent such a large amount of energy at once, and now he needs replenishment. Jen, crying, bent over Fan's body, shouting that he should not die. A medic moves towards them. The special group fighters follow her. The doctor touches John's crying and asks what happened here. The bald fighter asks where the 7th level demon went. One of the fighters notes that he still feels the remains of the demon's energy in the air. A fighter in yellow beach shorts notices the body of a large fly. He calls his comrades to the fly's corpse, saying that the demon is already dead. Having approached and begun to inspect the area, the fighters cannot understand what happened. The warriors of the Sacred Duty Squad, Hu Feng and Su Duoxiai, think who could kill such a powerful creature. Squad medic Zhou Shaokai examines John and decides that he is generally fine, but his energy is depleted, which is strange for an ordinary person. The soldiers go into the building to help the people who remain there. Shaokai replies that she understands and will join them soon. Meanwhile, a wounded fighter from their squad, in which she is the eldest, calls her. Pointing to Jean and Fan, he says that they killed the demon. Here the bald fighter, unable to continue further, begins to cough up blood. The eldest, moving towards him, tells the fighter not to waste his strength. She uses medical technology and a ball appears above her hand. The ball plunges into the fighter's body. A green glow envelops him, probably partially healing his wounds. The girl says that it's good that there is an eyewitness. He needs to rest by the tree while she helps her comrades in the building. Having finished speaking, she leaves the wounded soldier as well as Jean and Fan. Ambulances arrive at the hospital and begin to provide assistance to the victims. The orderly tells Jean that there are no serious injuries on Fan, which means he most likely just fainted.
He adds that if Fan comes to his senses, he can call his family to be...
Fan opens his eyes and comes to his senses. Jean is very happy about this. The wounded soldier looks at Fan with respect and calls him, but he does not notice him. While the fighter continues to wave his arms, his friends remember that they killed a man. They decide to run away because it is unclear what they will do to them for murder. The fighter watches helplessly as Jean and Fan, disguised as bushes, crawl away from the scene. Out of resentment, the fighter almost cries when an orderly comes up to him and asks where Jean and Fan are. He brought them buns? Jean says that this is his first walk with Fan. He is surprised to see so many strangers. Fan tells him not to worry. His friend will protect him. He, touched, says that he will also help his friend in any way he can. They walk hand in hand, repeating that they are best friends. While passers-by think that these two are probably crazy. Lying under the very bridge where they killed the octopus monster, the friends begin to remember how delicious its meat was. Off-screen, among the other creatures killed by the two heroes, Van begins to argue that octopuses are really tasty. The octopus's soul cannot stand it when Van begins to praise the aroma of octopus meat. With a completely full belly, he says that people are also delicious. Not only meat, but also souls. Apparently he ate Van. Jen calls Fan and says that someone is being insulted nearby. He points to a car with a tied-up boy sitting inside. In the van, pointing a gun at the boy, the kidnapper calls billionaire Jan Haya and says that they have his son. Threatening him with a pistol, he forces the boy to say hello to his father. The kidnapper says that if they don't get 50 million, the father can say goodbye to his son. To the man's surprise, the boy interrupts him and says that 50 million is very little. The previous kidnapper started with 500. The accomplice says that the guy's right. 50 million is really too little for such an adventure. A man talking to the boy's father says that the situation has changed. Now we need 500 million otherwise. Here the boy interrupts him again, saying that he is doing everything wrong. It is necessary to indicate specific deadlines and measures for non-compliance so that the kidnappers have leverage. The kidnappers look at the boy in surprise, realizing that in these matters he can understand more than they themselves. The kidnapper makes his demands on the boy's father much more clearly, all because the boy sits next to him and tells him what to say. When the boy tells the kidnapper to say that he has friends in the police, he asks what to do if he has no one. The boy explains that this is just a bluff, a psychological game. Having finished the conversation with the boy's prompts, the kidnapper hangs up the call. The kidnapper is very pleased with his increased negotiation skills. His comrade confirms that he conducted the dialogue quite well. The boy, however, notes that although in general he didn't speak that badly, he spent too much time talking. The call will be traced. They have a device at home that tracks the location of the caller, and in 10 minutes his personal security will be here. The kidnapper angrily points a gun at the boy and shouts that he wants to fool him. The boy explains that the kidnapper could not remember what he told him and therefore had to repeat each phrase to him, which took a considerable time. The kidnapper shouts that if he doesn't get his 500 million immediately, he will blow the boy's brains out, while his accomplice tries to calm him down. The boy calmly says that they have about 9 minutes left. At this time, John looks into the door of the van and asks why people are making so much noise. Everyone is shocked by John's unexpected appearance, not understanding what is happening. The kidnapper says that they don't need witnesses, so John is unlucky today. Pointing his pistol at the unexpected guest, he shoots. Cutting through the air, a bullet rushes towards John's face, almost hitting him. But Fan simply catches her with his hand at the last moment. Fan is very angry that they tried to kill his friend. A smoking bullet is clutched in his hand. Fan says that the kidnapper wanted to shoot, and it's very painful. Jean asks for help to take revenge, but he reminds his friend that he should not kill anyone because it is illegal to kill people, and they are on the run. The shocked kidnapper asks Fan how he managed to stop the bullet with his bare hands, if he is even human. The kidnapper begins to say that even if Fan is a demon, he is not afraid, but he does not have time to finish because Fan hits him in the stomach. The impact is so strong that the man flies out of the van along with the door. Having flown a few meters, he loudly plops into the water. His accomplice runs out of the van and runs to save his brother. Shan wonders. Will the kidnapper live after being hit by Fan? Fan says that he will hit him lightly and the kidnapper will survive. John tells the boy that they drove away the people who tried to harm him. The guy asks to untie him. Being untied, the boy notes out loud that Fan and John are not completely normal. Noticing a stamp on their pajamas, he realizes that they are from the Chi Chingshan Hospital. Fan tells John that he is hungry again. The blue screen is indignant. He had the opportunity to eat a creature of the 7th rank. The boy says that in gratitude for the rescue, he invites the guys to eat. They are sincerely happy with his proposal. Fan's appetite is difficult to overestimate. The guy adds that he needs to hurry, his guards will be here soon, he needs to run quickly. A helicopter flies to the scene. A man with a loudspeaker reports that the young gentleman's safety must be taken care of first. Several men in uniform are lowered down the rope. More helicopters are visible. It looks like the boy's father is really a billionaire. The guard asks the hapless kidnappers who they are and what they are doing here. Here, the man with glasses comes up with a clear idea on how to get out of the current situation. He says that a beautiful boy was kidnapped by 2 people in pajamas. His brother tried to intervene and paid for it. He states that his brother was beaten only because he asked if everything was okay. The guard continues to question the man with glasses when his accomplice comes to his senses. The shocked kidnapper in glasses quickly figures out what to do so that his brother doesn't blurt out anything unnecessary and he's not identified by his voice. Feigning a brotherly hug, he forcefully leans on his brother, knocking the air out of his lungs. The security guard is trying to understand why the man's voice seems so familiar to him. To understand where he heard the man's voice, the guard does not have time to tell him that the target's location has been discovered. Standing over his brother's body, the bespectacled kidnapper watches as the guard leaves. He praises himself, pleased that at the critical moment he did not lose his head and managed to get out. Sitting near a tree next to the destroyed hospital, an eyewitness to Fana's adventures tells how he masterfully defeated the fly. Everyone agrees that Fan must be very strong, but Wang Yue wonders where he went. The upset narrator says that the heroes ignored him and ran away. The girl says that this is a real sign of a master, to perform heroic deeds and not chase glory. Baldy says that he will not allow the heroes to be forgotten. He will draw portraits and give them to the information department to distribute them. He begins to draw with a pencil with concentration. Those present look at this with admiration. Having finished drawing, he begins to tell that he wanted to learn to be an artist, and his portraits are like 2 peas in a pod like the original. The soldiers gathered around the painting begin to praise it, saying that the characters in it are as if they were alive, and in general, the painting is the height of realism. The fighter with the goatee wonders if he sees the same drawing as the others. The drawing looks like the scribbles of a 6-year-old. The fighter thinks that if he speaks about this, he will be kicked out of the squad again. The building of an expensive restaurant welcomes special guests. Jan and Fan are sitting inside, as well as the child who invited them. There is a bunch of dishes on the table. 2 waitresses are discussing whether their new visitors have escaped from the hospital and whether they have enough money to pay. One of them remembers that such pajamas are worn in a psychiatric hospital. In order not to anger them, she decides to serve them normally and call the police at the last moment when they cannot pay. The boy asks whether John and Fan have eaten enough. Of course, the answer to this question is somewhat obvious. Fan, sitting next to a stack of dirty dishes, says he's still hungry. Jean, on the contrary, is full and thanks the boy for being such a good person, feeding and drinking them. Ran introduces himself to the boy. The boy responds by saying that his name is Chen Xiaobao, but they can just call him Xiaobao. Since Fang is not full, the boy orders more food. The waitress brings more dishes with a smile. And more dishes. Taking away a stack of plates, the waitress begins to worry. However, what worries her more is not that they won't be able to pay, but she's ready for that. And the fact that Fan, who has already eaten 7 servings, will die, and the restaurant will have to pay compensation. Xiaobao once again wearily asks Fan if he is full. Fan says no, but a voice in his head said that he wouldn't be able to get enough. John decides to hint to Fan so that he tells Xiaobao that he is full. He hints really so loudly that Xiaobao hears everything. After this, the trio, led by Xiaobao, prepare to leave the restaurant. The waitress calls the police and is going to say that 3 customers do not have money. But then a payment for 83,500 yuan comes through, and the boy, in a businesslike manner, tells the waitress that he doesn't need a check. The waitress cannot come to her senses and begins to talk some nonsense into the phone. Because of this, the policeman comes to the conclusion that she herself is mentally ill. Fan points to the building that he saw on TV and therefore knows that it's fun there. Xiaobao understands that he is talking about the world of video games, and understands that the patients of the psychiatric clinic hardly had the opportunity to visit there. In the world of video games. There is a crowd of people. They crowd around the slot machines and are having a great time. John and Xiaobao stand in front of the machine and play some kind of fighting game. Xiaobao wins once again. Ran is somewhat upset by this. He asks Fan to avenge him by giving up his place to him, probably thinking that his fighting abilities continue in the game world. However, to Zhanfeng's disappointment, he also loses the round to Xiaobao. The boy, boasting, says that he never loses this game. He played it so often that even if he wanted to lose, he couldn't. Fan, in front of the astonished Xiaobao's eyes, simply hits the screen of the slot machine with his hand, disabling it. Fan asks if he won by killing the machine. Xiaobao says that Fan won. The visitors are upset that they can't play fights now. John is happy that Fan helped him take revenge. Xiaobao notes that although Fan and John cannot be called adequately fun with them. However, he thinks out loud whether Fan's strength is too much for an ordinary person, because when he hit the kidnapper, it seemed like the end of the kidnapper. Fan, however, says that he has no strength. He is very tired and hungry. Meanwhile, a red dot appears on his forehead. A shot is fired from a sniper rifle and a bullet hits Fan's head. Under the screams of his companions, he flies to the floor of the gaming room. Xiaobao's guards break into the building through the windows, scaring the hell out of visitors. The guards point guns at John, shouting at him not to move. One of them covers Xiaobao's mouth with his hand. John tries to pump his friend away, saying that he is scared. The guard repeats the command not to move, otherwise John will receive a bullet in the forehead. John asks Fan to wake up because he said that when they shoot at you, it hurts very much. Seeing bad things happen to his friends, Xiaobao tries to free his mouth. Finally, he succeeds and gives the guards the command not to shoot. However, it is too late. One of the guards manages to shoot John. At the last moment, Fan's hand moves John away from the bullet flying at him. The security guard who shot John cannot understand how it happened. The next moment, the Fan firmly grabs his gun with one hand. With reddened eyes, he breaks the guard's pistol. His hands begin to tremble. John takes the guard by the neck with one hand and lifts him into the air. All the guards point their guns at Fan, who continues to hold one of them by the neck. The guards cannot understand what kind of monster is in front of them because a person cannot survive being shot in the head. Xiaobao orders him to lay down his arms. These people have not done anything wrong to him, and in general, they are his friends. The guards look at Xiaobao, trying to digest his order. Finally, with some relief, they lower their pistols to the ground. Fan continues to hold the guard by the neck, saying that the guard opened fire without understanding. Xiaobao apologizes to the two friends on behalf of his personal security. He gives Fan a deep bow to emphasize his apology. Fan continues to hold the guard's neck in the air. Xiaobao says that if Fan considers him a friend, he should let the guard go. This turns out to be the head of his personal security. Fan looks at Xiaobao and the red fire in his eyes slowly goes out. Jan approaches them, repeating Xiaobao's words that they are friends, and friends should protect and forgive each other. The words finally reach Fan and he lets go of the guard's neck. Employees run up to the head trying to find out if he is okay. Xiaobao sighs with relief, realizing that the situation has been resolved. Then Fan, in front of the boy, loses consciousness and falls to the floor. Friends surround Fan, who has fallen into suspended animation after his strength is depleted. Having examined Fan, Jean realizes that he simply fell asleep and again looks like a pig. He tells Xiaobao that last time Fan slept for 3 days, and since he can't sleep on the bare floor, he asks Xiaobao to be taken to the clinic. While the assistant opens the doors to the limousine for Xiaobao, he listens to the report. He turns to the television screen as the announcer says that a 7th-rank demon has been defeated by unknown masters. On the screen, they show a drawing drawn by a bald soldier. Xiaobao, seeing the scribbles, decides that the people from the special forces are clearly crazy. Xiaobao tells the assistant to go to the hospital. His friends are sleeping peacefully in another compartment of the limousine. The assistant asks Xiaobao if it is worth finding his kidnappers. He says that nature has already mocked them. At the same time, one of the kidnappers beats his brother, saying that he almost died from his blow. At headquarters, the fighters cannot understand why no one has yet reported the discovery of the masters. They are probably hiding well. One of the fighters cannot understand whether they really believe that someone can be identified from the picture they put on the news. A female trainer runs up to the fighters and angrily puts the drawing on the table. She can't understand who allowed this to be broadcast. Is everyone really out of their minds? She states that the demonstration of the drawing dealt a huge blow to the image of the special forces. Now all sorts of things are written about them on the internet. The artist asks if people really praise his abilities. She, however, disappoints him, shouting that commentators cannot understand how mentally normal people could post such a thing. She specifically addresses the 4 8th-rank fighters, saying that they should have understood what they were doing. As punishment, she deprives the team of vacation and sends them to help train new recruits in a mental hospital. 4 fighters are outraged that they are sent to babysit newcomers even though they are already at the 8th rank. The woman shouts that they should have thought about this earlier. Despite the fact that the squad is in the top 3, they make too many mistakes. The artist is upset. He understands that his comrades simply did not want to offend him, so they did not say that the drawing was bad. The bearded fighter thinks that everything is fine with him, his comrades are just very kind and tried not to hurt the artist. But they continue to tell the upset artist that the picture is simply perfect. The characters are lifelike, and they don't understand why others didn't like it. The bearded fighter understands that he is somewhat out of their company. Cyclops approaches a group of fighters, complaining that he just returned, but they are causing problems again. He asks what they broadcast so absurdly, then his gaze falls on the drawing. The fighter, skeptical of the artist's talent, is glad that someone else thinks the drawing is awkward. But then the head recognizes the people depicted in the picture. He is annoyed and is unable to hide it. The skeptic is amazed that the head recognized the masters from the drawing and believes that if so, he most likely has problems with his head. She calls Deputy Lee at the hospital and conveys his condolences regarding the attack of the 7th-level monster and the destruction it brought. Lee replies that there are indeed a lot of wounded. He hopes that those killed by the demon will be able to rest in peace. She tells the deputy to rest well because there are still patients who need his help. Lee tells the head doctor that 2 of his special patients were in the hospital when the cursed creature attacked. If the patients cannot be found anywhere after an attack with such a powerful demon, Shai interrupts Lee, saying that he understands where he is leading. Lee tells his colleague to stay strong and not let himself get discouraged. For a second, both of them sadly fall silent at the telephone receivers. And then light smiles appear on their lips. Finally, the nightmare that has haunted them for so long is over. She is immersed in philosophical reflections about life and death while standing at the window. He is interrupted by an orderly running into his office with the news. He tells Shai that some guy standing outside brought John and Fan to the hospital. She asks with secret hope if perhaps the orderly is talking about the bodies of patients. The orderly tells Shai that both special patients live. Shai understands that his dreams of a quiet life are not destined to come true. The news literally breaks him into pieces. She again calls Deputy Lee, who is lying in the hospital room. He tells Lee, who answered the phone, that he was wrong when he asked for a subscription. He apologizes to Lee, and he thinks that this is the first time he has heard something pleasant from the head of the clinic. Sure, as if casually asks if it is possible to get a subscription now. Lee says that now the subscription will probably no longer be profitable for Shai, who says that he just wants to see Lee more often. This flatters Lee's pride, and he decides that she is attracted to his charisma. Inspired, he agrees to go to the director of the clinic and sign up for a subscription. She hangs up the phone and tells the orderly that he succeeded, and apologizes to Xiao Bao, who is sitting in the office, for making him wait. He thanks Xiao Bao for returning the patients to the clinic, but he replies that it didn't cost him anything. Xiao Bao, drinking hot milk, tells Shai that before taking the patients to the clinic, they examine them in a private hospital. Assistant Xiao Bao hands over the report compiled by the clinic to Shi's hands. Shi, looking at the report, says that based on it, everything is fine with the patients. Xiao Bao says that their indicators are strange. Fan has very high stem cell activity, while John, judging by his bone tissue, is at least 100 years old. She says that he also doesn't know anything about John's age. The hospital doesn't have any records about it. However, when she arrived at the hospital, Ran was already there. Shots from Lee's past, not yet turning gray, he looks into the window of a room with bars. And he sees Zhanya there, who has not changed at all over all these years. Shai says that perhaps Jean is mentally normal and is simply a serene young man, unlike the graying Shai. Looking at Xiao Bao Shi's limousine leaving, he asks the orderly if Xiao Bao believed him. He thinks that he probably believed it. Looking at the sky, he again begins to talk philosophically about the fact that young people are prone to self-thinking. The picture of the sky is really very beautiful. The sky is very clear. Fluffy clouds are floating in the air. Somewhere at a great distance from the hospital, far in the mountains, a raven is flying in the sky. A raven flies into one of the mountain caves, flying between sharp stone ledges. Raven reports to the owner that the plan with Tahina the larva has failed. He felt the waves of a level 7 demon, but it was destroyed by unknown warriors. Since the awakened founder of the clan was destroyed, all the larvae laid by him also died. A huge crowd of damned creatures standing in the cave warily listens to the raven's words. The demon of the 9th level, the alligator, says in verse that if the fly did not cope with the task, then that's what it needs. The female polar demon Kitsune thinks that the alligator spent too much time among people, picking up insults from them. Leaning on a stone, she asks if they have accurate information about the number of fighters in the human city of Yanhai. Raven replies, there are 3 squads of 8th rank fighters, each of which is led by a 9th rank fighter. The main one is a national level fighter. The Kitsune thinks that a fighter of the 8th rank is approximately equal in strength to a demon of the 7th level, but it is unknown how things are with the fighters of the 9th rank. A hiss is heard. The demoness asks if the Overlord wants to send an 8th rank demon on a mission. Translating the next hiss, she says what she wants. The king orders everyone who has reached the 8th rank to come forward. Pushing aside lower-ranking demons, an ape-like figure steps forward. 3 dark silhouettes appear in front of the demon king. With a hiss, a clawed finger points at one of the demons. Kitsune says that the king has chosen him. The chosen demon turns out to be an adamantium gorilla. He furiously beats himself on the chest with his fists. A doll hangs from his belt. Raven says that he notes the smell of demons coming from ordinary people without the aura of warriors. The smells belong to a dog, a python, and an octopus that disappeared. Kitsune says that people can only have the smell of demons if the demons take the form of people, or she discards the last thought, thinking that demons eat people, but people don't have demons. She orders the Raven to take with her 2 demons of the 4th and 5th ranks and find out who these strange people with the smell of demons are. John, drinking soy milk, sitting in the clinic next to the sleeping Fan, says that he again resembles a pig. But why hasn't he woke up yet? Jean is sad. The head of the clinic, Jean, opens the door and greets him joyfully. Shai says that he is worried about Fan, who is still sleeping. 2 men in yellow helmets walk into the room behind him. Thinking about double payment and getting out of the room quickly, the builders are installing a toilet. While the head of the clinic asks John to look after his sleeping neighbor, the builders place an entire bathroom in the room. Having finished speaking, Shai thanks John, and together with the builders quickly leaves the ward. John, remaining in the ward, cannot understand what it was. Walking away from the boarded doors of the ward, Shai says that this will at least somehow protect the trainees, and he will deliver food by drones through the window. On the evening of the previous day, at the beds of sleeping Fan and Zhenya, Cyclops informed the head that newcomers would come to his clinic for training. The cautious old man says that he received a notification and has already sent a refusal. It is too dangerous. Cyclops gestures for Shay to wait a little while with her objections. A security enthusiast abruptly changes his position when he sees a check for a large amount. He will begin preparing the money tomorrow. Looking at John and Fan sleeping peacefully, he says that these 2 have achieved incredible strength.
Unexpectedly, he offers the Cyclops to buy them out. Of course, this is an artistic exaggeration. Real. Buying people is prohibited.
Cyclops says that there have never been psychos in the unit, and Hallie will never allow them to appear there, but asks for time to think. In front of the huge building of the psychiatric clinic, several rows of people who had come to train were lined up. Hal welcomes the teachers to his clinic and wishes them survival to successfully complete the test. One of the squad's fighters wonders if the head of the clinic is that same Hao. In the crowd, newcomers are discussing the scenes. One of them is very happy that they will be taught by fighters from Sacred Duty. The head of the clinic says that he has already received a notice with details of the practice for beginners and asks them to follow him. In the crowd, one of the trainees cannot understand what these details of practice are, but his friend calms him down by saying that they have nothing to fear from ordinary people. Stopping at the tree, the doctor tells the trainees that their task will be to care for the sick if they harm the patient or the patient fails the mission. The task shocks the newcomers for a while. They stand with their mouths open. They are shocked by how simple this task is. Ordinary people cannot harm them, and they themselves have no need to harm ordinary people. Exhaling, Shai thinks that perhaps he is worrying so much in vain. The blue screen reports that Fan has collected enough energy during suspended animation. He opens his eyes and calls his comrade. Jan joyfully rushes to Fan, who has opened his eyes and says that he has slept again for 3 days. Fan takes a bag of soy milk from a friend and asks if they return to the hospital. Rand says that Xiaobao gave them a lift. John says that the head of the clinic was very worried about Fan. He needs to find him and tell him that he has come to his senses. She will probably be very happy. The wooden boards that were used to hammer the doors crash into pieces. Leaving the room, John says that they are going to the director. Shai says to break into pairs and approach him. The patients and trainees form 2 lines. The head of the clinic brings together the patient who considers everyone his relatives, Linlin and the intern in a blue bandage, and tells Linlin that this is his father. The intern is trying to understand why he was called the patient's father. Linlin runs up to him, hugs him, and begins to say that he thought that his father abandoned him. The doctor gives the intern Linlin's medical history and tells him to take him to the ward. Shai introduces a young man with a yellow bandage to the owner of the watch store, Boo, and says that the client wants to buy a watch from Boo. Boo's eyes light up at the sight of the client, and he begins to praise his watch. While the salesman is shaking the intern's hand, he cannot understand what kind of watch store it is. They are in the hospital. Shai introduces the patient, who considers himself a professor of astronomy, to a new student, an intern in a yellow headband. The patient asks the intern whether he has read The Shortest History of Time, and he turns his head in bewilderment. The professor does not want to take on a student who has not even read the science book. She says that it is the trainee's responsibility to ensure that the professor accepts him. The head of the clinic hands the stunned intern the professor's medical history. John notices that people are standing in pairs in front of the head of the clinic. He decides that now he needs to stand in line to see Shai. In order not to break the rules, they become fans at the end of the line. She almost introduced Janya to the intern, but then he hears his voice. He understands that special patients have escaped from the ward. From shock, he falls to the ground and clutches his heart. John asks if everything is okay with him while the intern is staring at him. The intern asks John if he is the patient she will take care of during the test. He, moving away from the fact that he was called sick, begins to get acquainted with the intern, but then he is interrupted by the head of the clinic. The delicate old man tells the girl that she is not able to take care of John. She says that he will help the girl find a patient who will suit her, but she says that she can take care of Jean. Apparently she liked him. She gloomily notes to herself that no, she won't be able to. While the head of the clinic was distracted by Jean and the girl, one of the interns decides that Fan is his match and independently comes up to greet him. Shai is horrified to see Fan shaking the bald intern's hand. Shai stands between Lee and Fan and the trainees and begins to say that these two are not part of the mission. They are warriors with a modified body and therefore are too dangerous. But this only adds to the enthusiasm of the trainee paired up with Fan. He says that people with an innate body have a second rank already at birth. He invites Fan to fight. To himself, he is happy that he will be able to reach the third rank immediately after graduation. Getting into a fighting stance and activating the Golden Dome technique, he tells Jean and Fan not to get hurt. The trainees understand that the elder has a high-level technique, considering him the strongest of them and thinking that he will show the difference between them and ordinary people. Fan asks John in surprise if this strange guy is really asking him to hit him. When Fan clenches his fist, the headman says in disappointment that an ordinary fist cannot harm him. He wants Fan to use some kind of innate body ability. Fan's blow easily shatters the elder's golden dome. His fist crashes into the headman's stomach and fragments of the golden dome fly nearby. The air leaves the bald fighter's lungs. He cannot understand how this could happen. One of the Sacred Protection Squad uses the technique of 2 fingers of his hand engulfed in purple flame. While he is creating the technique, a girl from the same squad runs up to him. She asks if the formation is finished. The commander will arrive here soon to check. The guy replies that everything is in perfect order. The girl takes the guy by the jacket and says that she is sorry that they lost their 3-month vacation. He takes something out of his jacket pocket and gives it to the girl. It turns out to be a boiled egg. The girl looks at the egg and sees that her face is depicted on it with a black felt-tip pen. Touched, she tells the guy, whose name is Ayue, that it is very beautiful. The guy carefully peels the egg before handing it to Ayue. Accepting the gift, the girl says that since the construction is completed, she will be able to feel the energy of any creature in the clinic. She is glad that they have nothing to worry about. All students and patients are completely safe. At this time, they see the headman of Fan, launched by the blow, flying towards them. The headman lands at the feet of the guy and the girl just as she is about to eat the egg. The egg gets stuck in the girl's throat and she begins to choke. Aiwei turns the girl over so that the egg falls out. This is not the most effective way to help a choking person. This, within the limits of fiction, however, helps. The egg falls out of the girl's mouth. The rest of the squad members who see this understand everything wrong and decide that Ayue began assaulting him even before marriage. Ayue and the girl explain the situation and they are happy that everything is fine, but the headman, lying next to him, declares that somehow he is not very well. While the girl is treating the headman's injuries, he reveals that he was beaten by a warrior with an innate body. Ayue says that then it's clear why they didn't feel anything inside the formation. One of the fighters decides that if a warrior delivered such a blow without using energy, his innate body must be very strong. At the same time, in front of the hospital, the trainees are shocked by how hard Fan hit the headman. She looks thoughtfully at the sky, hoping to see the fighter who has flown away. He tells Fan that while his and Jean's tricks concerned the two of them, he could still somehow tolerate it. But now, they have caused harm to a stranger. Fan, justifying himself, says that the headman himself asked to hit him. Jean, nodding, confirms this. Shai says that even if this is the case, this is not a reason to wave your fists left and right. The trainees are desperate that their strength is not enough to defeat an ordinary person. Upset, they refuse the test and want to return to the academy. Jan calms Fan down, while the bearded fighter carrying the beaten headman realizes that these are the masters he saw before the fly's attack. Knowing, after the situation with the portrait, how differently he and his comrades perceive reality, he worries. Will they recognize the masters? When they get closer, they immediately recognize those who were able to deal with the 7th-level monster. The fighter is touched because this means that his perception is not so different. In front of the shocked clinic staff, the special squad soldiers begin to rejoice that they have finally found Jean and Fan. They say that if it weren't for them, there would have been many more victims in the fly incident and call the guys masters. Masters stand in front of a group of fighters and do not understand what is happening. A bearded fighter wonders why the masters are dressed in pajamas for the mentally ill. The fighters decide that the masters must have pretended to be mentally ill, as in the parables where the monks are hiding in the market. And only the bearded fighter, with his characteristic skepticism, says that perhaps the guys really are mentally ill. One of the fighters recalls that before they were sent on a mission, they were strictly ordered to be respectful to Shai. He decides that this is due to the fact that great masters are hiding in his clinic. Everyone in the squad unanimously agrees with him except the bearded man. She thinks that even though he really is in the hospital for a reason, Jean and Fan are really mentally ill. The fighters of the Sacred Duty Detachment believe that they can recommend Jean and Fan for joining the special unit. The headman understands that it was completely in vain to run into a fighter who defeated a 7th-level demon. Sure, delighted that he can get rid of problem patients, confirms that these are indeed hidden masters. He says that such talents can be recommended to their boss and even Chin himself. The special squad soldiers are very happy to have this honor to meet great masters. John says that they are going to be sent to some special unit. Fan replies that he would prefer to stay at home. The acupuncture master is afraid that she will be worried if they leave the clinic, but she is more worried that they will stay here. Putting his hands on the guys' heads, he says that although he worries about them, he knows their love for training. In the special forces, they will have new opportunities for training. The head of the clinic says that even though it's hard for him to let the guys go, he can't ask them to stay. In parting, he hugs the guys and says that he will miss them very much. The entire special squad was imbued with the touchingness of this scene. The headman says that the masters are like ordinary people. Nothing human is alien to them. The bearded fighter carrying him on his back agrees with him. He adds that since the headman was beaten, he did not pass the test and will have to return to the academy. The girl paired up with John wonders if she should still look after him. He happily agreed to this because the girl is good. He responds by offering to take care of the girl with acupuncture. The girl happily agrees, although she forbids her. During the acupuncture procedure, the girl thinks that the master will strengthen her internal source of energy, and she will wake up strong and beautiful. In that very position, she falls asleep on the grass with needles stuck into her head. In the distant future, her body is shown in a museum saying that the girl fell into a sleep for 100 years. Visitors think that this is the Sleeping Beauty. In the present day, bending over the sleeping woman, everyone is trying to understand what is wrong with her. The fighters decide that the master's technique is too powerful for the girl and she needs to be allowed to sleep. One of them notes that the girl failed the test. Since there are no more trainees left, they decide to return in a month with Fan and John as those who passed the test. Sitting in the branches of a tree, the demon raven finds people from whom the smell of demons emanates. He sends a rank 4 bear after them to test them. Then the bird realizes that it has missed something important. Being too focused on John and Fan, she did not notice the presence of the aura of the 8th-level warriors. Fortunately for the raven, he has a concealment skill that allows him to hide his energy along with the demons that are near him. The bird decides to lure out the warriors and then check the two strange people. In the hospital park, John shows Fan an ant that is similar to the one that Fan did not eat. The fighters, hiding behind a tree, think that this is probably some kind of spiritual technique. By examining all living things, they penetrate into its secrets or something like that. Shai says the trainees have been distributed, the injured are in the hospital, and rank 8 warriors are monitoring problem patients. Now everything should be in order. And if not, Shai can't do anything about it. After all, compared to the fighters, he is weak as a flower. He takes out a large flower and begins to cry over it. Fan and John drink soy milk, saying that it is cola, and sprite fighters think that this is probably the highest level of practice. The head of the squad says that masters, with the help of their minds, can cognize and change reality. Other fighters agree that this is cool. The squad observes Fan, who has lost consciousness after receiving acupuncture from Jean. One of the fighters says that the masters help each other with acupuncture, and Fan fell asleep like an infant, restoring his strength. Everyone agrees with the friend and thinks that this is very thoughtful, except for the bearded skeptic who says it's the other way around. John tells the fighters that he has been honing his technique for many years and invites them to try. The fighters wonder what John means by the benefits that acupuncture can bring. The bald fighter thinks that infant sleep will not benefit mere mortals. He realizes that he and his comrades are too different when they unanimously agree to undergo acupuncture. John concentratedly holds the needles between her fingers, preparing to apply the half-step rotation of the universe technique. The skeptic hears the sound of a clarinet. This sound foreshadows death. He is already saying goodbye to his comrades who are lying on the ground with their eyes closed after the master's procedures. John is sad that something is wrong with his acupuncture technique, standing over the sleeping soldiers. He sees that there is only one fighter left on whom he has not tried the acupuncture technique. The fighter's imagination pictures death with a scythe standing behind John and calling him along with him. The fighter kneels down, tears begin to flow from his eyes. He says that when he joined the squad, he knew that he could die. If his comrades are dead, he will follow them. He tells Jean to begin the procedure. He is ready. Even Jean looks shocked by this display of feelings. All 4 fighters are sleeping peacefully on the ground after Jean worked with them. Raven notices that the aura of the 8th level fighters has disappeared. While there are no warriors, he sends a demon of the 4th rank, a ferocious bear, and a demon of the 5th rank, a mad tiger, to test Fan and Jean. The blue screen informs that Fan has completed his self-improvement procedure. The screen reveals a new technique to him and tells him that there is a food source nearby. 3 patients are sitting in the hospital park and talking carefree about something. Then they notice a beautiful bear, along with what they call a mama tiger. The tiger growls loudly at them because he is actually a male. The patients fall to the ground. They are very scared. One of them covers his ears, hoping to hide from the roar of the tiger. John sees a demon raven and says that the bird is very ugly. Raven is indignant at how dare they call him ugly. Isn't that a compliment for demons? Flying away, he leaves John and Fan to be torn to pieces by the demons tiger and bear. The demons rush towards John with Fan, a red light shining in their eyes. The blue screen awakens Fan, using up 20 of his physical abilities to suppress suspended animation. The tiger jumps on John, who tries to defend himself with his hand. The blow of Fan, who has come to his senses, throws back the tiger demon, and blood flows from the mouth of the damned creature. From the impact, the tiger's body flies upward in a parabola. The demon bear looks at this in bewilderment. After hitting the ground several times, the tiger finally landed in the grass. Jean is glad that Fan came to his senses. While fighting the bear, he asks if Jean thinks the bear is cute. The bear is embarrassed by the fact that he is considered cute. It seems that almost all demons have complexes in this regard. John says that the bear is not cute, but angry and ugly. The person's words hurt the demon, literally breaking his heart. From the offensive words, winter seemed to come to the bear's soul. Crying, the demon bear waves his huge paw. Fan deftly grabs both of the demon bear's paws in mid-flight. Holding the bear's paws in his hands, he asks John if at least the bear's paws are cute. The demon bear is waiting for someone to tell him that his paws are cute. Jan, looking at the bear, replies that its paws are very cute. Confused by such words from the demon bear, he begins to reminisce. The demon king asks the bear if he wants to go to people like the other demons. The bear says that he wants this and asks permission from the king. He explains that people think bears are cute, but only when they are small. Raven says that no one will consider the bear cute. He and the king have been exploring people for a long time, and they need someone nicer in order to go out to people. Under the pouring rain, there is a box from which bear ears stick out. A silhouette with an umbrella approaches the box. A boy with an umbrella and a backpack behind him discovers a teddy bear in a cardboard box. The bear affectionately presses against the boy's hand and whines sweetly. The child brings the bear home and hides it in the room from his parents so that they do not hand the bear over to the zoo. The parents have returned from behind the door of the room. Their voice can be heard. The bear leaves the room. The boy tells him not to do this because his parents can see him. The guy sees from behind the open door how the bear is dealing with his parents. They shout that there is a demon in the house and look for their son while a puddle of blood spreads outside the door. The bear's paw appears from behind the door. Having finished his business, he returns to the boy's room. Mishka says in his language, incomprehensible to the boy, that no one can separate them since their parents are no longer there. The boy, in desperation, swings a knife at the demon bear. He hurts the bear's eye. The bear cannot understand what he did wrong. He just wanted him and the boy to be together. Shouting, "Die, demon!" the boy puts the knife forward and attacks the bear. This cautionary tale should teach us that we should not take wild animals from the street. In the present tense, the bear is touched by being called cute again. Then something goes wrong. The bear looks down and sees a terrible picture. Fan tore off the bear's cute paws. He holds them in his hands. Drooling, Jean adds that they are also fresh. A hospital patient suddenly runs up and takes the paws, saying that he knows how to prepare a delicious delicacy from them. Fang Jan and the stunned bear watch as the self-appointed chef takes the demon's paws into the kitchen. The cook says that he will call Fan and Jean as soon as he prepares the paws. Feeling deceived, the bear attacks people despite its wounds. Fan promptly punches the demon bear in the stomach. The bear freezes for a while with his mouth open and blood pouring out, and it takes flight high into the sky, almost touching a raven flying nearby. Lying on the ground, the bear complains to the raven that these two deceived him, called him cute, and cut off part of his body. The raven says that he is lucky to have survived. Fan drags the tiger by the tail, asking Jean if the kitty is cute. He replies that it is very cute. The raven has a very bad feeling. He thinks that the demon tiger is no longer destined to return from this battle. The tiger's soul, having flown out of his body, understands that the raven is about to run away. The demon crow, taking advantage of the fact that the couple is busy with other demons, actually runs away. The cook says that he knows how to prepare an excellent delicacy from tiger meat. Friends drag the tiger into the kitchen while his soul leaves his body crying. The ghosts of the creatures killed by a couple reassure him and say that now they are his family. Having entered the kitchen, the cook takes out a mysterious knife of 9 heavens. It's not known why it is in the kitchen. Amid the screams of the frightened female cooks, he butchers the tiger's body. The tiger demon soul continues to cry, "In heaven? What do demons do in heaven?" The souls of other demons console him by calling him 5th in the number of victims of Fan and Jean among the demons. Hugging with his brothers in misfortune, the tiger understands that their cuteness has let them down. The cook brings out the stewed bear paws to the general rejoicing. A very pleasant aroma emanates from them. There are already a lot of dishes on the table. Many patients of the hospital have gathered to have a good meal. The disclaimer warns that you should not eat wild creatures. They are protected by law. Female chefs complain to Shi about patients and say that they will not be able to work in the clinic if he does not raise their salaries. A dissatisfied Shi walks ahead, realizing that the hospital's financial condition could suffer greatly. They enter the hospital cafeteria, where a feast is taking place. Opening the doors to the dining room, the hospital staff notices that something strange is going on there. The patients seem to be intoxicated. Several of them are lying on the floor. Gloomy sure cannot understand how this happened. Everyone looks worried. The old man asks John what happened to the patients. He put the bear's paw skin on his hands. Fan examines the screen visible only to him. John innocently says that they were just eating a delicacy when something strange happened to the patients. She immediately ignites righteous anger, frightening everyone around her. The cook immediately shifts the blame onto John and Fan, saying that he himself is not to blame for anything. The head of the clinic knows that the chef usually prepares dishes from inedible ingredients and wonders where he got the delicacies this time. The cook says that Fan and John killed the animals, but he only cooked and is not guilty of anything at all. Suddenly, the head of the clinic puts his hand on his shoulder and begins to talk affectionately. He says that he knows that Fan and John do everything bad, but the cook is not to blame for anything. Doesn't he want to work in the kitchen at the hospital? The cook replies that he won't work without high-quality ingredients. Sure replies that basically they are all illegal. The head understands that starting next month the chef's salaries will have to be increased. They are very happy about such news. He tells the orderlies to call Huadian Hospital. Let them take the patients who have eaten delicacies. She tells Fan and John not to give the ingredients they obtain to anyone in the future. The head of the clinic thinks to himself whether he can even die a natural death. 4 soldiers of the Sacred Protection Squad wake up from the effective acupuncture performed by John. One of them notes that it was an infant sleep sent by the masters. It is not surprising that the detachment slept for so long. The girl notes that her skin has become smooth. The guy says that he is full of strength. The bearded fighter says that they did not notice the main thing. They all moved to the 9th rank. The fighters are surprised that ordinary acupuncture promoted them to the 9th rank. Ayuk tries a 9th rank defensive formation and succeeds. All the fighters are delighted with this, especially his beloved. Ayue says that he will need to thank the masters for promoting him to the 9th rank. A mechanical bird arrives and reports that the squad has been ordered to immediately return to headquarters. Ayue wonders what about the test for beginners. The bird informs him that 4th level fighters have already been sent instead of them. Ayue sadly thinks that he will have to postpone gratitude to the masters until he returns. The entire squad is alarmed. As they leave, they continue to rejoice that thanks to the help of the masters, they were able to break through to the 9th rank. A meeting at the headquarters, the woman says that the energy waves of an 8th rank demon have been detected. One of the fighters notices that several demons of the 7th rank immediately appeared, and now a demon of the 8th level. This is not without reason. The woman says that he is right. If you connect in places all the points where the demon appeared, you will get a route, the next point of which will be a nature reserve. Cyclops notes that there may be a demon camp in the reserve. The woman says that this could very well be a trap. The demon leaves 2 obvious traces. Perhaps he wants to lure out the operatives. And that's why they can't sense. The fighters report that they have all broken through to the 9th rank. The woman asks again in surprise. Obviously, breakthroughs to the 9th rank do not happen often. The soldiers, smiling, say that mysterious masters helped them. Since there is no time for recertification, the woman simply asks Cyclops whether she can trust the words of the fighters. He confirms that the waves of energy of the fighters already exceed the 8th rank. They are definitely at the 9th rank now. The woman says that she feels better. Most likely this is a trap, not a demon camp. 9th rank fighters have every chance of returning from a mission in full force. Ayue says that they will definitely return from the mission, regardless of whether it is a trap or not. Cyclops thinks that the fighters will be able to return in full force only if they do not encounter 2 demons above the 9th rank. He reassures himself that a demon of the 8th rank could not just give away the location of the camp. This is most likely a deception that the fighters will cope with. Then Cyclops realizes that the fighters have just returned from a psychiatric clinic, and whose masters they want to introduce are his old acquaintances. Having arrived at the place, the squad notes that there are no waves of demon energy. The place does not look ominous. One of the fighters walking through the park stumbles upon something soft. His face passes through a transparent barrier which surprises the fighter, but for several seconds he cannot understand what it is. Water barrier is an innate ability of a rank 9 demon that can hide waves of demon energy. Targets begin to appear on the tablet. The system says that a lot of high-ranking demons have been discovered. The strength of the squad is insufficient for the battle. The squad understands that this place is still a demon camp. Realizing that the forces of their opponents are many times higher, the detachment decides to retreat. They run as fast as they can through the park, hoping that they will be able to escape. But then a shard of ice breaks through the tablet and the soldiers realize that they have been discovered. At the headquarters, the signal from the Sacred Protection Squad is lost. The sensor in the tablet was destroyed. A polar kitsune demon of the 9th rank appears above the fighters' heads. She is surprised that people managed to find the camp. She says that she underestimated the people. The squad realizes that this is a 9th rank demon with an innate body. They cannot cope with her. But water barrier is the innate ability of another rank 9 demon, so Kitsune here is not the only one with such a high rank. Kitsune says that they found the camp, but they won't be able to get out. She brings sharp ice shards down on their heads. The bearded fighter uses the Golden Bell defensive technique, and a protective sphere appears above the squad. Sharp ice spears crash into her and break against the golden protection. The medic uses the 6-fold recovery technique. Then another demon falls from the sky, an iron-billed woodpecker of the 5th rank. With its powerful beak, the bird crashes into the sphere and cracks begin to appear along it. Ayue uses the purple lightning technique to roast the demon bird. But then a whole flock of such birds appears, all of them flying towards the sphere. The woodpecker attack is intensified by a new wave of ice shards from the sky. The bearded fighter struggles to maintain his defensive technique. The medical girl healing him understands that he won't last long. Finally, the weakened warrior, spitting out blood with his mouth, is defeated. The defense is broken. Through the gap in the defense, demon woodpeckers fly towards the fighters along with ice shards. One of the demons remains a few centimeters from the bald spot of a weakened fighter after using protection. But then the cane of another squad member tears apart the entire flock of demons. The miraculously saved soldiers are sitting among the golden fragments of the protective dome. Polar Kitsune, turning in the air, dodges the cane blade that killed the woodpecker demons. When the blade flies to her throat, she thinks that the fighter who used this technique is really strong. Flying away from the blade pursuing her, she thinks that the strength of people at the 9th rank is indeed very great. Finally, the blade crashes into the tree. It literally smashes it into pieces. Pieces of wood fall from the sky. The fighters, joining forces, use the technique of bipolar lightning bolts. A purple protective sphere begins to appear around Ace. Polar Kitsune uses her ice spear technique and throws it at Ace. At the last moment, Ace sees a piece of sharp ice flying towards him, flying through gaps in the sphere that has not yet closed. Without having time to do anything, he sees Ayaxiao rushing to stand between him and the spear and covering the guy with his body. Xiao's body is pierced by a long shard of ice in front of the loved one she saved. Ace holds her dying lover in her arms and asks if she is in pain. She answers that no, not painfully clinging to her beloved for the last time. With her last breath, she creates the maximum recovery technique. Ahi tells the head of the squad that his equipment will not last long and that he and the wounded Hu need to leave. The head, putting 2 fingers forward, creates a portal technique when another bird flies up to the protective barrier. He turns to Hu and tells him to leave. He himself is very exhausted. Xiaoxiao uses the maximum recovery technique on Hu and the head. Hu cannot understand why she did this. The head shouts to Ace to quickly get into a defensive formation. But he explains that the technique needs to be recharged with energy from the outside. If he enters, the portal will collapse. Moreover, Xiaoxiao is already at the limit. Ace is unable to hold back her tears. He tells the comrades to hand over everything to the head and the others. While Hu and the leader of the squad disappear into the portal technique, Ace says that they will be comrades again in the next life. 4 demons, a leopard, a mantis, and a wolf run towards the protective sphere in which Ace and Xiaoxiao are located. While the demons are attacking the dilapidated sphere, the guy tells the girl that he never told her that he liked her. She takes him at his word. He just said it. She heard everything. Ace thanks Xiaoxiao for supporting him and inspiring him from the very beginning. A giant titanic centipede of the 6th rank begins to attack the sphere. Xiaoxiao says that she did all this because Ace is sincere and sweet, and she liked to watch him smile. Before the sphere collapses, Ace, still holding Xiaoxiao in her hands, uses a destructive technique. She blasts Ace and Xiaoxiao along with many demons. Polar Kitsune, looking at the result of the technique, cannot understand why people are not afraid of death. Somewhere nearby outside the battlefield, a portal technique is activated. A blue circle appears on the ground. Ho, who escaped from the demons, and the head of the special squad appear in the circle. The head says that they need to hurry. They must inform the command. Hu sees a strong demon trying to attack the head. He uses a defensive technique. A golden barrier appears between the head and the demon, which instantly collapses under the demon's foot. It seems that he is really very strong. The demon's kick sends the head and Hu flying several meters away. They crash into a tree and fall to the ground. Traces of blood are visible on the tree, and a demon approaches them. By the characteristic hissing, one can understand that in front of them is the king of demons. His silhouette looks like a cockroach. The cockroach monster turns out to be a demon of national rank. Standing over defeated opponents, he continues to hiss. The cockroach raises its leg above its head. At this time, Hu's body fills with a golden glow. He creates a technique to strengthen his body and takes the cockroach into a restraining embrace. Hu shouts that the head needs to run away quickly. He won't be able to hold off the demon for long. The head replies that the demon's strength is much higher than that of the kitsune in front of him. He doesn't even have the strength to move. But he thinks to himself that this is not the main thing. If it were not for the breakthrough to the 9th rank, he would not even be able to try to use the last technique. The head is enveloped by wind currents. Hu understands that the leader is using a technique from which there is no return. Wanting to help, he creates a strong striking technique and hits the demon in the face with all his might. The blow, however, has no effect. The demon is too strong. The cockroach king effectively kicks Hu in the stomach, sending him flying into the air. Hu crashes into a tree nearby and breaks it with his body. Leaning on his cane, the head continues to create his latest technique, the wind dancing around him like a brush on a piece of paper. Flashback to the chapter, he is in a cemetery, together with Hu and some boy standing at 2 graves. The boy tells the older relative that it is time for them to return. He replies that he knows this. The child continues that he is scared every time Hu goes on a mission in case he doesn't return as the boy's mom and dad. Their son was still a baby when they died. He does not want the head to suffer the same fate. The orphan says that he will not stop the head, but hopes that if he decides to die, he will remember that there is a person who is waiting for him